Hello and welcome to episode 57 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind.
57? Holy cow, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, the time's going by in the podcast, just like it does in everything else. 57. That's Mike over there, realizing...
Yeah, this is Mike.
The edge, and this is Russ over here on this microphone. Yeah. Your loyal hosts, and we've keeping up a steady roll this year so far.
Yeah, looking good so far. Into third of the year has passed. It's now April, and the cherry blossoms have come out here in Kyoto and all over Japan, and we've been really enjoying that. The weather's been pretty nice too. Although today was cloudy, it didn't really rain though, which was good.
Yeah, just a few sprinkles. Yesterday I was out hiking, and I spent the last portion of the hike coming through this huge cedar forest. And, I don't normally have allergies or anything, but the pollen was so thick, you could taste it, and I can still taste it. And I've got a nose full of it still. So if I sneeze or wheeze or something tonight, I apologize for that ahead of time. But it was worth it to be out in the nice weather.
I actually don't hike. I get invited to go hiking often, but I don't want to go because the thought... I'm not really too crazy about the woods. Like, I'd prefer to be by the sea or something like that on the beach. But the thought of just being, like, in the woods far away from people with, and being with the same people for 3 hours is just horrifying to me. I can't spend 3 hours with anybody.
That's, it's like the Sopranos episodes when they go down to the... pine barrens or something.
See, it's not something I can't do that. I'm just not.
I see.
When I think about all this stuff about how far away we've gotten from like a natural way of life and stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm all for it. Although I could do without a lot of this these digital incursions into our lives. But right. Aside from that, I like civilization. I hope it continues. And brings us all this music. Yeah, we can't have adult music without a civilization. So
not without all these digital technologies. But I like to break free for a while and get back into nature and the woods.
No, me too, but just not in the woods. I don't know. There are animals there, and then there are other people.
That's the worst, yeah. Even when you go in the mountains, you can't get away from the people. But
yeah, they're still there.
What are you going to do? Oh, all right. Well... for any new listeners here, our format is to discuss usually 6 new recordings, mainly classical music and jazz, although sometimes we get into world music and other frontiers each week. And I'd like to also let you know that for the music we'll discuss, you'll find links to Spotify and Apple Music in the episode description. You want to check out any of the recordings. You'll also find a link to the full episode playlist all in one place on Deezer, our preferred streaming platform. Check it out if you haven't heard of Deezer. It's CD quality music, a nice catalog, especially for jazz and classical music. You can find us there under the username Adult Music Podcast. You can also follow the podcast there, as well as check out any of the recordings. Now, if you don't see the full description or the links aren't active on whatever platform or app you listen to us on, you can always come over to our host site, Podbean, Podbean, and there you'll find all the active links for all of our episodes, going way back to last year. If you do enjoy the podcast...
Way back, right? To last year.
Way back to last year.
Long. So long ago. Although it seems that way now.
Seems that way.
Yeah.
If you do enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. Take a moment, give us a ranking or write a review. That also helps us get into the recommended browsing list, and that helps us get new listeners, which always makes us happy.
Yeah, more new listeners, please. Yeah. Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Yeah, tell a friend. Yeah. That's the best word of mouth.
Instead of going hiking, listen to our podcast. Although you could listen to it while you're hiking, although that might be dangerous. See, on the beach, it wouldn't be dangerous. You'd be okay.
I think we get most of our new listeners from searches for different styles of music or different artists rather than the browsing categories, because I don't think anyone really goes into music commentary.
Right.
I want to hear guys talk about music, but...
Maybe we should change our search criteria. Instead of calling it music commentary, we should just call it something else.
Apple sort of has etched those categories into not so, flexible kinds of things.
Right.
But
another odd thing about our podcast, because when I listen to podcasts, I always listen to the most recent one.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed that most of our listeners they'll download episodes from long ago, and I'm kind of wondering why. Are they picking up? It's just a recording we did long ago, and they're just finally catching up with it now?
That's
I don't know.
why I think we get a lot of listeners based on searching for other albums, because like this week I noticed there was one day we had 5 downloads of one episode from last June, and I thought, why the sudden interest in that? So I think it's somebody who was looking for a certain artist, or something had come up
or composer,
related to that, or composer, something like that. That's all good. However anyone finds
That's
us, we hope you keep listening.
But I feel like we're better now than we were then, so I want people to hear the new ones.
Yeah, and even if you get tired out from listening to us go on and on about the recordings, you should come just to check out our lists every week, because I think you won't find this kind of music all in one place, certainly. But we both spend a lot of time deciding what is worth talking about. So do check out our playlists.
Because there's a lot of music, and we really want to talk about all of it. And maybe one day we will, if you make us pros at this. We might do it every day, although I think every day might be too much for me. I mean, I don't know, maybe 3 times a week, that'd be okay.
As much as I like Deezer's catalog, and I like the sound quality and everything else, man, their new recommendations really are horrible. They're way behind, and they don't have much variety.
The world needs us. They just don't know it, because they do recommend horrible things. And I
think
don't know
Deezer should appoint us as their classical and jazz list curators, and sort of promoters for all the music that they get on there.
Yeah, I think a few classical record labels should give us some booklets to write to, because some of these are really horrible. Yeah. I think we could write a good booklet note.
What's even more funny is some of the promotional emails we get, saying, please talk about this recording, because the flowery language,
because no one else will.
Yeah, some of those things are described in his. I wonder, you obviously paid someone to write this, because it's not matching the reality of the recording. Anyway, there's lots of funny stuff happening, but the music is serious, and you're guaranteed to find something interesting every week and get some variety. Also, you can now find us on Facebook, so look us up there. We've got a page under Adult Music Podcast. You can leave a comment or a message there. And if you want to contact us directly with any comments or questions, you can do that by email as well to Adult Music Podcast. That's all one word, at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And before we go any further, we also like to thank, as always, Fast Signs of Staten Island for our lovely logo.
I hope you like it, everybody.
Yeah, and
it certainly stands out.
Eye-catching neon pattern on that brick wall that's out behind the adult club where we're based, if you can imagine that. So,
yeah, we now have business cards too with that logo on it, and when I give them to people, they almost do a Hollywood double take. They're like, "What's this podcast about?" I really hope, I really hope it isn't putting people off, because it's a little joke that we want to, do. Because there is music for adults, and I think we need to be adults when we are adults and listen to adult music. I still listen to kids' music too. But, I feel like the adult music, jazz, classical, keeps me sane in this kind of crazy world, because it keeps your brain working. It's intellectual, it's emotional too. Gets into emotions that pop music don't get into. I can get into some.
Are there any emotions in
places.
Pop music these days?
These days, I don't know, because even now they have that auto tune, and they're hiding behind the emotion behind that. It drives me crazy. I mean, it's a sound that everybody likes, but nevertheless, it's not like a. An electric guitar can sound different, but this autotune always seems to sound the same. It's that weird robot voice,
I can guarantee there's no autotune on any of our recordings tonight.
Yeah, and there's no autotune on us either. Speaking of another guy who there's no autotune on, we lost Gil Scott-Heron just the other day. There's a funny thing. We have the name of our podcast because of the... I guess we're going to call the podcast this. I can say it. Okay, we have a Ravel recording on this podcast, and then we have 3 jazz organ releases. So we decided to call the podcast the Ravelution Will Not Be Organized. play on Gil Scott-Heron's very famous track, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," from the late 1960s. I think 1969. I think. It might have been 1970, 71. I'm not sure. But that was earlier in the week, and then the news that Gil Scott-Heron died just came in like yesterday or today. I can't even remember now. But it was a weird coincidence. We didn't plan on.
I hope
you
this
know
is not...
we didn't call the podcast "The Revolution Will Not Be Organized" because of Gil Scott-Heron's death. He actually died a few days after we came up with that, which is sad. Anyway,
I hope that's not a
give him a
pattern
listen.
or something. Yeah. So I noticed when in the band I played with, we were starting to like pick some, like, oh, let's play this song. This is a good song. We can arrange this to match our style, and we would work on it.
Right.
And then that guy happened to die, and that happened a couple times, and I started to think, this is not a good pattern.
I want to tell those. Maybe we should call our podcast. Maybe we should call the one episode "Mike and Russ Get Rich," and maybe that'll happen. You know?
Could happen.
I don't know. Maybe one day. But I got to tell you, I almost hit the quasi big time. I'm playing. Last year we were downloaded 5,275 times. I checked, and I'm playing that number in the numbers for lottery here in Japan. And this month, the number 5,279 came up. So 3 of my digits were correct and in place, and just missed by 1. I could have had, a nice little jackpot there, but I wound up with nothing. Anyway,
keep trying.
Yeah, keep trying. So I'm gonna play that number for the rest of the year, and then then I'm just gonna retire it after when 2023 starts. Hopefully it'll come in. Get some extra spending money. I got some Dali speakers I want to buy.
I recommend them. I have 2 sets myself.
Yeah, they're excellent.
Anyway, since that time we're well over 7,000 downloads now, so thank you listeners for that. And actually, we're in the religious holy season this
we
spring
are.
now,
it's,
and that's how we're going to start out the music this week, isn't it?
Fifth Sunday of Lent, and we actually have a again, not intentionally, although I was thinking of doing sort of a Lent / Holy Week / Easter episode, because there are all these, like, every year around this time you get new Bach Passion recordings, and this year there are 2 there are probably more than 2, but there are 2 that caught my eye. One of them was a new recording of John Elliott Gardner of the Bach's St. Matthew Passion. He did a really famous one back in the 80s. And this one is recorded in Dolby Atmos. And that's a weird kind of surround, that you need multiple speakers for, and more than 5 like I have. And there's just no way. I can't do this, But there is a 5-track, a 5-channel one version you can listen to on the Blu-ray disc that comes with the album. So I'm going to be checking that out. The Dolby Atmos, it's a little too much, because even the 5.1 sound one, it gives a little bit more dimension to the recording, but I mean, it's not really all that much different from hearing stereo. I mean, it's just it's got a little more depth to it, and they use the back channels for like back of the hall sound. It just kind of makes it a little more
not subliminal messages or anything.
Yeah, no. What really works in surround though is organ recordings are fantastic in surround, because if you think about it, you walk into a church, where is the sound coming from? It's coming from above your head, wherever the pipes are somewhere, and it just diffuses throughout the church, and you get that effect. It's really cool, Choral recordings are pretty great too in surround. Yeah.
Well, where's our religious experience going to begin today?
All right, so we're going to do, instead of Bach, the other ones, there was a St. Matthew Passion too, with Sabine Devielle singing on it. I can't remember who the... So I wanted to hear that. I haven't heard that yet, so I can't really talk about it.
We've got a little time before Easter, so
2 weeks. Yeah. 2 weeks. We'll be recording on Easter Sunday in 2 weeks too, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. This week
I have a religious jazz recording too. I could throw in there.
Do you really?
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to do the Easter episode. I think it might be a little too much, because that's the Passions. They're all multi-disc set. They're 2 or 3 hours long.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's all we'll be listening
really
to.
Wanna,
so.
We'll it'll take a lot of time. Anyway, but I don't know. Maybe not this year. But anyway, I did manage to get this recording of Giovanni Battista Pergolesi's Stabat Mater, the mother standing by the cross. So it's about Mary, the mother of Jesus. it's a really famous work. It was written in the last year of his life. Pergolesi is rather famous for having died at a very young age. I think he was only like 25 or 26, maybe even 27, like Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix. But he was one of these people who he died ridiculously young from, I guess, some disease that he got from drinking too much. So, but Robert Greenberg, in one of his video series for the teaching for the great courses, mentions he didn't know the name of the story, but there's a short story about this group of scientists who come up with a way to revive like the dead or something like that, or like they get I don't know what it is. They revive the dead, or they kind of can prolong a dead person's life, kind of add years to their life, something like that. And they decide to they decide to kind of try it out on maybe a famous person, and the person they choose is Pergolesi in the story. And he so they bring him back to life, and he immediately starts drinking and carousing again and dies again. So, in the story, which is probably what would happen. So I guess our wishes that these people had lived longer probably wouldn't have panned out very well.
Although, can't escape your fate.
Yeah, Mozart's might have. But Pergolesi, this is someone who a longer life would have probably benefited us all, because he was a great composer. He sounds very Mozartian at times, because he's really the bridge between the Baroque era and the classical era. He's already writing in these classical styles, and he's coming up with this. And if he had lived into his 30s and 40s, who knows what he would have come up with. He died 20 years before Mozart was even born, so he might have been well on his way to achieving some of the things that Haydn achieved too. I mean, he was a great composer at his age, and the Stabat Mater that we hear here was a big model for a lot of composers about how to compose religious music and things like this. Okay, we also hear on this a work by Haydn, kind of interestingly enough, a symphony number 49 in F minor, La Passione, which means passion, but doesn't have anything to do with Jesus' passion, I don't think. But it did. Okay, let me see. Yeah, it didn't. I'll explain where that comes from when I get there. Anyway, the artists are one of our favorites, Jodie Devos, the soprano, and we heard her on the Sweaters album from last year. She was wearing a yellow sweater on the cover.
Turtlenecks, yeah.
Turtlenecks. She was a turtleneck, yeah. We also get Adèle Charvet, mezzo-soprano. The Maitrise de Radio France, which is a young people's chorus. Le Concert de la Loge, conducted by Julien Chauvin, violin and director. And this is on the Alpha label. Okay. Pergolesi's Stabat Mater there are many arrangements of this. Even Bach made an arrangement of it. The original one is for let me see, two singers, soprano, contralto, and string orchestra with organ accompaniment, and that's it. But in this one, we get an arrangement that has a chorus in it too, which is rather nice, actually. I rather like this. This was the first time I've ever heard this arrangement. So this particular version was published in 1769. That's 33 years after Pergolesi's death. So his music was still being heard. Now, this is unusual, by the way, because until the 19th century, music was disposable. So you think about the great works of Bach. I mean, they were just heard in church, and that was it. They were never heard again. He would reuse a lot of his music for other works. The Christmas Oratorio is famously lifted from a lot of his earlier cantatas. But this work actually made the rounds. It stuck around, and that just goes to show you what high esteem it was held in. One of the reasons for it sticking around is that the Concert Spirituel in Paris performed it throughout the 1700s. Now, what they were, the Concert Spirituel was it was an orchestral group that put on concerts for the public. Now, this is, in other words, they did what happens today. All right, if you go to your local city, your city's symphony orchestra, that's what the Concert Spirituel did. Except that at that time, no one did that. Composers always performed for like royalty, or some sort of duke had his own orchestra or something like that. And this ensemble formed in Paris to perform new works and to keep the French public informed on them. Now, again, also remember that we didn't really have pop music. There was popular, like kind of music for dances and stuff, but the music these people listened to was opera, mostly songs, and also this orchestral music, which was considered, I guess, a little more highbrow, but was still very popular. Let's see. Chauvin approached the work with the idea of the chorus playing a key role. Chauvin is Julien Chauvin, remember, is the director or the conductor. He thought of the chorus playing a key role in the narration of the powerful text, which is about Mary's suffering at seeing Jesus die on the cross. It's a very sad prayer. Let's see. So this would have been heard in Paris in the mid-18th century, this version. Anyway, it's separated here into 13 sections, some longer than others. Okay, and it goes through the entire Latin prayer. It's all sung in Latin. Okay, now the Stabat Mater, right away, we hear this, and I've heard this work quite a few times, and Chauvin here takes a fairly quick tempo. This is really moving. Usually it's taken more slowly, so the weepiness of the orchestration, the text, it kind of gives you that sad feeling, comes through. But he goes pretty fast here. There are nice classical cadences. This really doesn't sound like a Baroque work at all. And we get sounds like a young women's chorus. And they also sound young, like they're teenagers. These aren't like, I'm saying young women here, so they're really teenage girls, I think. The soprano voice sounds suitably operatic, but this is Jodie Devos, and she was the reason I wanted to hear this, because I really liked her pyrotechnics, and she has this spectacular voice, very Italianate for this work. It's fantastic, but I think it got lost in the mix. It sounds like she's a bit recessed or far away from the mic. I guess they didn't want her pinning the levels with her really powerful voice. So I felt like we didn't really get a good listen to her. I actually heard this again in headphones just to make sure, and indeed, she's kind of a little far behind. Everyone else sounds great. The mezzo comes in and sings harmony, and you can hear her very clearly. The chorus is very present and easy to hear. They're right up front. And this is rather an odd balance, because the chorus is, of course, going to drown out these solo voices if they're at full power. The characterization is all fantastic. It's a great performance. And we move on to the cuius animam gementum. Soprano sings the dotted rhythm vocal line. Here again, her high notes are getting lost. And I'm wondering if she's backing off the mic, so that, maybe at the suggestion of the producer. I don't know. The strings are louder than she is at her loudest at some points, and that's not good. We want to hear her. This is why we come to these recordings, really, to hear the singers. She's got some great notes in this movement, too, so it's a real shame. Again, good performance, a bit lost in the mix. And this is a real shame, because this sounds like a really great performance by her. Let me see. Next, O quam tristis et afflicta. This is the third track. The chorus starts, very present, beautiful texture. And the soloists, both of them, sing along with them after a bit. I'm picking up the mezzo's lower notes more easily than the soprano's higher ones, which seems really odd. Okay, que morebat et dolebat, an oddly cheerful harmony and rhythm in this section. It's a really sad work. I guess Pergolesi needed contrast. The mezzo sings about the mother grieving and trembling while watching her son in torment, and the tone of the mezzo is appropriate for this sentiment, but the rhythm sounds really cheerful in this one. I don't know. Next, quis es homo quis non fleret. Devos is in the spotlight at the beginning of this dramatic melodic line, and again, she's recessed in the mix. Her high, strong notes disappear in the mix, but you can easily hear her mid-range. So this is why I think she's backing off the mic, or somebody's like twiddling the knob or something. I don't know what's going on. I don't hear that. It sounds to me like a room thing, like she's backing off. The chorus takes over, and the soprano burst out with a passionate line. And this particular section takes up 2 stanzas of the prayer. We're going to start getting multiple stanzas from this point on. Track 6, Vidit suum dulcem natum. I'm guessing this is the mezzo here. judging by their recording quality, sadly enough. A moving section that speaks of Mary witnessing Jesus' death. It ends with a bit of tone painting of Mary witnessing Jesus' last breaths. I think he dies in the downward key change toward the end. There's a moment where the key moves downward, and that's Jesus' end as far as the crucifixion goes, which is really his beginning, but let's not get into that. Track 7, Ea Mater Fans Amoris. The prayer takes a turn here to supplication of Mary by the singer. This is the mezzo. Make me feel your sorrow as I mourn with you. Really lovely words, and they're beautifully set by Pergolesi in this work. 8, Fac ut ardeat cor meum, an excitable section with lots of energy and imitations of the chorus, where they sing, Make my heart burn for love of Christ. Track 9, Sancta Mater Istud Agas. This section of the composition features 5 verses of the prayer. They go through a lot. Devos features in the first verse, and she comes in well and clearly at the beginning, and you can hear she's a bit away from the microphone. The mezzo comes in for the second verse, and the chorus for the third. Soprano and mezzo alternate, and then duet in the last verse. Track 10, Fac ut portam Christi mortem. This is a pretty long work. It takes about a half an hour. This is a long orchestral introduction. The mezzo sings the 2 verses that we'll hear, and the vocal line is hesitant and pleading here as the mezzo asks of Mary that she will be allowed to share Christ's passion. By the way, when I say that vocal line is hesitant, I mean the line. It doesn't mean the singer is, holding back, okay? All right, it's just the way it's composed. Okay, inflammatus. Some of the words I use sometimes I'm like, they can be taken the wrong way. Okay, inflammatus et accensus, and Devos is heard here, and her voice is in a good place in the mix here, so something changed. I don't know. She sounds pretty good. Well, she sounds good throughout the recording, but the recording of her here sounds a lot better. She duets with Charvet in the second verse, with some entrances by the chorus. This movement sounds Mozartian, but it's 20 years before Mozart was born. Amazing. Track 12, Quando Corpus Muriatur, a mournful opening by the orchestra, Devos and Charvet duet and alternate phrases here. And then the 13th movement, the Amen. A lively rhythm launches the Amen. Very brief and lovely sound. Okay, so that's really not enough for one disc. So we get a rather odd choice here. Joseph Haydn's Symphony number 49 in F minor, La Passione. Haydn's symphonies were often programmed by the Concert Spirituel, so there's like that Concert Spirituel theme here, that Parisian orchestral body that presented new works to the public in the 18th century. Haydn's symphonies often opened programs during Passiontide, which is the 2 weeks before Easter. So there's Holy Week and then there's the week before that, and all of that's considered to be Passiontide. This particular symphony shares the same key as Pergolesi's Stabat Mater and is one of the most dramatic and passionate of Haydn's compositions. I don't know about that. That's what the notes say, but this sounded pretty mellow to me, actually. Yeah. This performance replaces the oboes and horns with an obligato organ part, and there's your there's your problem right there. Although, without the oboes and horns, and with the organ, this work sounds very similar to the Stabat Mater of Pergolesi. It was kind of amazing. They kind of sounded like 2 cuts of the same cloth.
Yeah, this sounded not like Haydn. If I had heard this in isolation, I would never have said, oh, that's Haydn, because the organ is really prominent and it's missing some of the other characteristics.
Here's the thing. I bet it is dramatic and passionate in other performances, but I think just without the oboes and horns, it loses some edge here, because the organ kind of tends to soften things a bit. It's got like it doesn't have much edge to it, those big church organs. They're kind of nice and smooth. Anyway, this opens Adagio, and it starts with the same mood as the Pergolesi, and the sameness of the key only heightens that feeling. The orchestration sounds rather thin and mournful. It's not passionate. It's really mournful, I think, without the oboes and horns. And the discrete organ tones only add to that. I'm pretty amazed that this 7-minute movement is all Adagio. It never speeds up, and the mood doesn't change, really. Usually contrast is the name of the game in both Baroque and the classical era. It's unusual, and it's also very touching, I thought. The second movement, Allegro di molto, is very lively, and again, uncannily echoes the sound of the Stabat Mater. It's the orchestration and Chauvin's approach that achieve the similarity. The orchestration tempers the drama of the movement. Now, some people will see that as a problem. Maybe. But given the program, it's interesting. I wouldn't go for this as a first choice, as this Haydn symphony. I suspect that the guy who wrote the person who wrote the booklet notes that's the most dramatic and passionate of Haydn symphonies is thinking of other recordings. Often the person who writes the booklet notes in these CDs hasn't heard the recording they're writing about. They're talking about the work, and then they go by their experience of hearing the work in other performances, live or recorded. I wonder if this person would change their mind about this work if they actually had heard it. That's not unusual, by the way. We can't really fault the writer for that, because they're writing about the work, not the performance we're hearing. Okay, the minuet and trio section, movement 3. Pergolesi profile again to this. The minuet's edges are a bit curvier in this approach. Minuets tend to have sharper edges because it's like a dance, and here it kind of sounds a little smooth, It's crunchy versus creamy peanut butter difference, It's this is the more creamy version. The organ features heavily in the trio, providing contrast, and it gives this secular work a churchy vibe there, which is kind of interesting. The finale is marked presto. This is the fourth movement. A quick, stormy movement driven by the strings. The organ provides some sustained harmony. It ends unexpectedly with an abrupt, upward harmonic move that sounds like it's going to lead to another section, but it doesn't. The last movement is only like less than 3 minutes long. It's very short, so even that's unexpected. Okay, so overall, this whole album is pretty mellow, okay? It's a unique approach to both works. So if you're looking for something a little different, that's good. It's fairly meditative, or it's low-key, and you might enjoy that. The performances in the Stabat Mater are all fantastic, and I would say especially Jodie Devos's, but we can't hear it. I really feel like we can't hear it fully. I feel like the engineer kind of let us down here. Her voice just is too far back in the mix. Okay, so I called this an experimental album. It largely succeeds except for Jodie Devos, and it's a shame because I think she gives a great performance here. I wish I could hear her right up front.
I have a similar overall impression. The word that pops into my mind is attenuated. Sort of like the limits on
That's an excellent word.
The vocal extremes of dynamic range and other things seem to be, somewhat attenuated, and the soprano never really reaches the peak that you might be expecting. That said,
I think though that she does though, but she's just too far back in the mix, because there are some notes that really ring out.
Yeah.
In the headphones, but they're just not ringing out in your head or in the space,
Yeah, that said, I was pretty pleased with the balance between the two vocalists, and that I could hear, them both equally well and make out the parts when they're together. Now, what I found kind of unique was the sound of the orchestra, which sounds rather small. I think it's not a large orchestra, but the overall presence is small. But somehow it seems appropriate for the work, and it works to highlight the general balance and prominence of the vocals. So I thought the orchestra never seems overpowering, but yet it has a nice warm quality. It's part of the recording sound too. The strings sound warm, and it is full enough, but it also seems to have space. And by space, I don't mean sort of spatial character of the recording hall, but sort of the kind of, how can I say, openness between instruments so that I can hear the parts clearly. So I liked that about this recording. And I also did like the choice of the children's choir.
It was really unique. Just the fact that there was a choir in this too was amazing enough.
It sort of gives a unique, sort of lighter aspect when the children's voices, they're all female voices, but when they're in there, it sort of brightens up the overall ambiance of the piece.
Yeah, I don't know if they can be the notes say children's choir, but I don't think they can be characterized as children. They're a little older. They're like teenagers. Yeah,
they're teenage female voices, I think.
Yeah.
Overall, yeah, like I say, it's a little unusual take on this because I've not this exact arrangement or version.
It's an unusual
of the Stabat
arrangement.
Mater.
So,
yeah, but I found this one interesting, and the Haydn. Like I said, I would never have picked this as Haydn if you had given me a blindfold test for it and said, what is this piece? But I enjoyed that too. I like the prominence of the organ. And again, the same recording quality and orchestral dynamics of that recording made it easy to hear all the lines in the string parts. And I got the same impression of clarity, but sort of warm resonance in the recording. So I thought it's a little unusual. And as you say, missing the other orchestral parts, so that gives the organ more prominence, which makes it kind of unique. So as you say, maybe these are, it sounds strange to call, music from this period recorded as experimental, but it's certainly a different take on arrangements and performances. So maybe not something you want to have as your definitive versions of these works, but definitely worth a listen and overall satisfying results, I thought.
Yeah, I would say for this, listen before you buy. Okay, you'd have to make sure you like it first. I want to mention, by the way, about the Haydn Symphony. There's a recording from 2 years ago conducted by Barbara Hannigan, the soprano, on an album called La Passione, works by Grisi, Nono, and Haydn. And she conducts this work on that. And it's really powerful on that album. And that's what I was thinking of when I was listening to this. And I said, wow, this is really different. So if you want to hear two completely different approaches to this work, you can check that one out. That's on the Alpha label as well. Barbara Hannigan conducts the Ludwig Orchestra and sings in the Grisi and Nono pieces. And she conducts the Haydn. So that's a pretty powerful performance, I seem to recall. All right, so the next two classical recordings are both absolutely spectacularly recorded. So if you're an audiophile, you're going to want to hear both of these. It's really, they're pretty great. Okay, the first one is Nightscapes, and this is a solo album by Magdalena Hoffman on the harp, released by Deutsche Grammophon Records. Okay, Hoffman is German. She's a German harpist, but she was born in Basel, Switzerland. A lot of the works on this album are transcriptions of piano pieces for harp, and there are one or two that were written originally for harp. And because it's called Nightscapes, there's a nighttime theme to it. And what's funny about this is that I listened to it late at night to kind of get the mood. Oh. There was a fairly jolting earthquake here in Kyoto when I was listening to it. There was a little too much drama there. I had to stop listening and finish it the next morning. I didn't want to go on. I was a bit shaken up by that. We were all okay though. It was a fairly small and very mercifully short earthquake, but it did.
I confess, I listened to this in the daytime. Because we also have a recording that we both like called Late Night Lute.
Oh, yeah. I remember that
but
one.
I confess to listening to that in the morning often, too. So I can tell you that please don't be, feel obligated to wait till evening to listen to this because it sounds good any time of the day.
It does sound good any time of the day, but it's a beautiful recording, first of all. I don't think I've ever heard a harp recording where the harp was so beautifully captured, like all the gorgeous tones on it. And no doubt a lot of that has to do with Hoffman's sound, but the engineer on this one deserves a nod, and I'm going to give him that as soon as I figure out who he is. But
I think this everyone has probably an image. Certain instruments have get stereotyped or relegated to a kind of role, especially in the orchestra. Last week we did bassoon, right? And that was sort of the revenge of the bassoon in some ways, that gets these kind of lopey kind of character sort of parts in program music or in, orchestral arrangements. And in a harp, sort of is left to conjure up these angelic flights of kind of strums or arpeggios. But this recording really gives you a full spectrum of what the instrument is capable of. And then what I found, as you go through this, maybe I'll comment more, but especially for the piano transcriptions here.
Which is almost all of the works.
Yeah, especially the, what do we have here? We've got some Schumann and Chopin. The harp is able, because of you're using your fingertips, so the variety of attack and articulation sort of enables it to be, what I found noticing is that I sort of sometimes got an image of piano and sometimes of guitar, and sometimes I found she's able to overlay these effects, so it almost sounds like you're listening to two different instruments at once. And I found that the real appeal of, especially these Chopin pieces that I'm familiar with, that it sounds like I'm listening to two different instruments playing that, and sometimes more, with what she's capable of with the variety of articulations and especially that lovely sustain that the harp has. It's really a kind of adventure into the sound capabilities of the instrument.
Yeah, so Hoffman makes a beautiful sound, and the recording producer, Philip Krauss, finds the ideal miking and distance to capture this sound. This is a great sounding recording of a harp. Let's just say that. Now, the program, the thing that attracted me to this was the program, because it had a combination of fairly well-known works with some that kind of come out of left field a little bit. And she starts out with a work that really isn't very well known, Ottorino Respighi's Notturno, Nocturne, in G-flat major. This is originally for piano solo, and it's from Respighi's, it's number 3 from Respighi's Sei Pezzi per Pianoforte, 6 pieces for piano. This is a really nice piece. It's
really pretty.
I don't know why we haven't heard it, but you got to think it's originally for the piano, though. But it's got this...
It doesn't remind me of Respighi.
Well, not the...
It's really pretty.
Yeah. Okay, so this starts with a droning bass, which kind of always gives you the feeling of the countryside, or should. I guess if you lived in Europe at this time, you would think about that right away, because they used to play these musettes, which is kind of like a lighter version of the bagpipe, and it had a droning bass that the melody would be played over. So droning bass with a simple melody over a sort of a block. It's like a split block chord where you'll have the two bottom notes and then the two top notes split together on a harp. It sounds really pretty like this. This has a nocturnal feel to it, of course. It's pretty, it's mysterious, and you need silence when you're listening to this, or headphones, because the pianissimi are really pianissimo. Like, the sound is almost disappearing, but it's always there. I listen to this in headphones to make sure it's all good. Yeah, this is a really nice discovery.
This one is especially where I started to notice, it sounds like a piano, but with guitar, because she gets both, that...
the guitar effects with the split chords,
sometimes the attack is rather percussive like a piano, and sometimes it's rather plucked like a guitar, and she has that differentiation of articulation that's really nice in her touch. So I thought, wow, that's really kind of enchanting to listen to this.
Yeah, tracks 2 and 3 are little known waltzes by Chopin. Okay, they're both well, the first one we hear is in A minor, and this is listed as KK4B/11, or recatalogued as B150 if you follow such things. You can look on Wikipedia for that. That'll you'll remember that, right? But in other words, it's not one of the ones that was published during his lifetime. This is originally for piano solo, of course, and the version for harp is in A flat minor, not A minor, so it's been transposed down a half tone. Believed to be written about 1843, so that's kind of towards the later part of Chopin's life. He died in 1849. And his life is really... His first works emerged in the 1827 or so. And really, his two big kind of decades where the 1830s, which is when you think of the 1830s, you can think of them as being for the piano in Paris what the electric guitar was to the 1960s in the U.S. and England. This is when the piano really became a big popular instrument and just drove all the music of the time. And then the 1840s were kind of like the hangover after the 1830s, where things were starting to kind of dissipate and get kind of like laden with a lot of extra layers and meaning and stuff like that. So this is a later work. It's 1843. It's fairly uncomplicated, which is odd, really, for such a late work. It has a straightforward harmony, and it's beautifully and sensitively played. Hoffman has an excellent command of the rubato that Chopin's music demands. This is one of the things that really makes Chopin's music musical, is the proper use of rubato, which, to be honest, I was never good at. I could never really judge that somehow.
It's because you're a New Yorker. You're always in a rush,
so?
going
I'm
here
always in
and
a
there.
hurry.
Yeah.
I can't like slow down.
Get out of my way. Yeah.
Yeah, linger a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
gotta
stretch
be a
the melody
southerner
out.
to get that.
Well, you gotta,
lazy rubato.
chew a lot of bubble gum or something and stretch it out, or I don't know, get that elasticness going. Okay, anyway, Chopin's Valse in E minor, KK4A/15. That's really not helpful, is it?
That looks horrible.
Yeah, B56. That's a little better.
Yeah.
We generally know Chopin's works by the key, and also the opus number helps us, but this is, again, not published during his lifetime. This one was for piano solo. Version for harp is in E flat minor, so this is also transposed down half a step. This one is probably from 1830, so really right at the beginning of Chopin's career. It's formed like a rondo, and it's fleeter than the previous one, with more figuration in it. The levels between the melody and accompaniment are excellently balanced, and the Chopin waltz character comes through with the rubato, of course. Great clarity and sense of line throughout. This piece and its playing sparkles. There's a real sparkle to this. We get another 20th century Italian composer around the same era as Respighi, Ildebrando Pizzetti. Now, his music was recently rediscovered. Well, it's always been around, but it's been it's been slowly making a comeback, which is nice with all the research that's been going on. This particular piece is called Sogno, which means dream, and originally for piano solo. So basically, everything we've heard so far has been originally for piano. This starts slowly and tentatively. It's in 4/4, but with notes grouped into 3 and a rest. Da-da-da, da-da-da, that kind of thing. But there's probably a name for that kind of figuration. I just don't know what it is. Okay, it's very pretty, sensitive melody, and it really glimmers. Nice decorative detail in the melody after 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and very sensitively played. Give this a listen. It's your new favorite piece. Well, it's one you'll like. It's really pretty. Okay, next we get to the first multi-movement work, which was originally for harp. This is Benjamin Britten's Suite for Harp, Opus 83. Okay, this is a fairly challenging work, I have to say. The first movement is an overture, and it's labeled Majestic. And there are some odd, dissonant Britten harmonies in this repetitive opening, adding some spice to the chords. And I like a good spicy chord, so I was pretty happy to hear that. It gets aggressive with its spice block chords in the middle of the movement. I like the way this movement isn't composed to the cliches of the harp. It's originally a harp work, but it doesn't have any harp cliches in it. No glissandi, none of these arpeggiated figures and things like that.
Cupid's shooting arrows and stuff like that, yeah.
All right, anyway, Britten Suite for Harp, second movement, Toccata. Toccata is really means touch, and it's kind of like to test your technique out or to demonstrate your technique to the audience.
This really is really difficult.
Yeah, I know. It is a true toccata with some impressively quick, rippling figuration, changing between aggressively plucked and gently caressed textures. Yeah?
I like how you say that.
Yeah, caressed. Okay. It's also very brief at 1 minute and 33 seconds. Third movement, Nocturne. We get a lot of these on the Nightscapes album. Slow, heavy, treading bass pattern at the beginning. Mysterious melodic figures in the high end. Okay, so we get that arpeggiated Well, it's more of a treading pattern. It's not really an arpeggio. Okay, fourth movement is a fugue. You throw back to the Baroque era here. Lively, no pause between the previous movement and this one. This is an impressive but short fugue theme played out on the harp. Now, this is a hard thing to write on the harp because the harp has pedals that change its key. It's not like a piano where you have... usually harps aren't chromatic. That's why glissandi sounds so nice on them. You can do a nice glissando on the piano too, on all the white keys, because that's C major. But in order to change the key on a harp, you need to press the pedals down, and it changes the whole intonation and stuff. So in order to do this, to have a fugue on a harp, and especially something with odd harmonies in it, it's a real challenge. I'm kind of wondering how that's done, or if she's actually playing a chromatic harp here. I'm not sure. Anyway, fifth movement is the last one. It's a hymn, slow and solemn. This moves like a chorale. So if you think of Bach chorale, like a church work, with half arpeggiated, half block chords, ending in resolves. It sounds very reassuring for that reason.
Interesting too. It gets into the kind of like a Spanish modal ideas about 3/4 of the way through that is a little bit surprising in it.
Yeah, it moves very slowly, mysterious and beautiful. Okay, next is a composer that we really should get to know, John Field. He was Irish, and he was the one who invented the nocturne for piano, and Chopin picked up his nocturne ideas from John Field. Not only that, interestingly enough, John Field was apparently a great pianist and published a book of piano technique, and that book was used by Clara Schumann's father. Clara Wieck's father, she would later become Clara Schumann, when he taught her to play the piano. So John Field has had a big influence on music. We don't really know much about him. His nocturnes are a little harmonically less complex than Chopin's. Chopin kind of added a lot of his genius to them. But Field's are pretty great too, and these have gorgeous night quality that Chopin also captured. There's a beautiful singing melody. This is required for the nocturne as far as Field and Chopin are concerned, and arpeggiated accompaniment. And the second nocturne that we hear from John Field is in G major, H58. These are both originally for piano solo, by the way. This one has a rising and falling accompanying arpeggio, and a bit closer to the nocturnes Chopin would write with a single singable melody. All right, now we get into the French harp composers here, or at least one of them. Henriette Penier, Danse de Lutin. And a lutin is kind of you can think of it as a goblin or a leprechaun, or some magical creature of the woods. The booklet translated as an elf, and that's probably most appropriate here. But we shouldn't think of like Lord of the Rings elves for this. These are like little elves. They're little creatures that are magical, sort of like a leprechaun, and they're a little playful like a leprechaun too. This has a quick rhythm and a very light touch from the harpist to evoke the magical world of these creatures. It sounds more elf-like than goblin. Goblins are kind of menacing, and leprechauns are a little tricksy. So this sounds a little more innocent. There's a flickering firefly-type quality to the glimmer of the harp tone in this, expertly captured by Hoffman and the engineer. The middle section is more song-like and reflective and features some harmonics from the harp. Very pretty touch on the ending, arpeggiated chords, and final short glissando. It's a pretty piece. Next we get Clara Schumann, interestingly enough, since her technique kind of comes from John Field's sort of writing via her father. This is a notturno in F major. Interesting that she would choose to write a piece like this. Number 2 from Soirée Musicale, Opus 6. Originally, of course, for piano solo. Clara Schumann was one of the great pianists of the 19th century. This is a really dark-sounding nocturne. It's played in the lower register of the harp. The melody's in the lower part of the melodic range of the instrument, and it broods. It's really kind of romantic, like mid-century romantic. It gets very pretty toward the middle, with Hoffman utilizing her gorgeous light touch. And I like the way the piece breaks unexpectedly into a Siciliano rhythm past the 2-minute 15-second mark. The arpeggiated accompaniment is gone by this point, droning chords replace it. There's very inventive accompaniment throughout this piece. It's a really well-realized composition by Clara Schumann. A nice find. Probably fun to play, too, if you're a pianist. You should pick it up. Next, we get another French harpist, Marcel Tournier. La Danse de Moujik. A moujik is a Russian peasant. And this is number 12 from Image Suite number 4, Opus 39, number 3. You wanted to say something about Russian peasants there, Russ?
No, I've never met any myself. So
I've never met a Russian peasant, but they get ridden in battle. I feel like I have, though, because I've heard lots of music that they dance to in my life. Okay, so I feel like I have a picture of them. Anyway,
I have been to Russia, though. But
you have been to Russia?
Yeah.
I've never been.
Yeah, I had lots of... Actually, I had a lot of good food and, of course, lots of vodka as well. And actually, one of the disconcerting things about going to Russia is, like, I couldn't read anything because I don't know the alphabet.
The Cyrillic alphabet, right?
Yeah, but I did find the people actually quite accommodating, and they helped me out a lot.
Wow.
Despite not getting a lot of smiles, because I don't think Russians smile a lot.
They're not a smiley people, are they?
But they were quite kind and helpful, and I had some interesting food. Especially, I was able to eat some game meat and things. So rabbit and deer with.
You get a lot of that in Europe too.
Yeah, local spices and lots of vodka and see some historical things too. So it was interesting. Yeah. But, interesting experience. But
I hope you
didn't meet any
summer.
peasants, no. So
you probably could have if you traveled outside of the city.
Could have, yeah.
Anyway, this piece has a 2-note harmony in the accompaniment, and the melodic material proceeds in 4-note phrases, so very much like a dance. It sounds like a busy piece and rather hard to play.
Yeah.
And it's originally for the harp, too. So the quiet section that begins at around the 1 minute 30-second mark is really amazing for the gentleness of the sound conjured by the harpist, Hoffman. After that, the dance rhythm really opens up as it heads towards the mid-range of the instrument, and we get the material in harmonic form as well after 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The rhythm picks up at the end and leads to an exciting and quickly realized ending. Next, Chopin again. Waltz in A minor, Grande Valse Brillante, Opus 34, number 2. Originally for piano, of course. This is a familiar waltz, taken at a slow tempo here. She plays this fairly slowly. This sounds a lot more gentle than the original for piano, which spins more via the waltz rhythm. It has more of like a spin to it. It's very pretty here, with the 3/4 not coming across as dancey, but merely marking the rhythm. It doesn't really sound like a waltz you dance to in this performance. A lot of this work occurs in the lower end of the harp's register, and it ends rather abruptly and unexpectedly. Next, we get rather a surprise. Fred Hirsch, jazz pianist.
Yeah.
Born in 1955, still active. He's a pretty intellectual pianist, and he wrote down a few of his improvisations, including this one. He published a set of 3 works called 3 Character Studies, and this is one of them, Nocturne for the Left Hand Alone. Now, I'm not sure this is going to be for the left hand alone of the harp. It is for the piano.
What's the right hand doing at night?
Yeah, well, I do wonder why Fred Hirsch, no, people can't use their right hand. There were a lot of these kind of works after the World War I because a lot of people lost the use of one of their hands. Right. So there were a lot of works for those musicians who had been injured in the war. All right. Interesting choice here. Hirsch wrote this one down. It's pretty angular and slow in its accompanying arpeggiation. The accompaniment is traditional a la Field and Chopin. The piece remains rather slow in its progress, not a traditionally beautiful work, but one that requires a bit of concentration to listen to. It's almost like a comment on a nocturne. It sounds stark, and it's got a very pretty cadence at the end.
Yeah, it sticks out as being unique here, but interesting to listen to.
Yeah, it leads into Jean-Michel Damas, a composer who wrote a lot of light music, and I really like just about all of it, especially that for the harp. He lived in the 20th century. This is his Fantaisie pour harpe sur des motifs de Contes d'Hoffmann d'Offenbach, the Tales of Hoffmann. And interestingly enough, the harpist's name is also Hoffmann, so there's kind of like a little connection here. All right, this is from the famous themes from the famous opera. It has this loud, grand, regal opening, which the harp does quite well, surprisingly, with quickly arpeggiated chords followed by music box-like delicacy in its figuration and harmonics. About a minute and a half in, we hear the famous barcarolle rhythm from this section of the opera. And then this gets some ornate figuration added to it. It waltzes a bit at 2 minutes and 46 seconds. At 3:30, we're back to the barcarolle with the Venetian-sounding song on top. And gorgeous playing and characterization throughout, with the upper decorative patterns beautifully taken. The piece really is a set of different settings of the melody over the barcarolle. It ends rather suddenly, as the last go-round of the melody ends. Finally, we get a Chopin nocturne. This is the first Chopin nocturne, and only one we're hearing on this album, because all the other Chopin works were waltzes. Again, originally for piano solo. This is a later nocturne from the 1840s. Quietly, I think, but it's not an early one. With some dark tinges of harmony. This actually was the first nocturne by Chopin we're hearing, as I mentioned. The piece goes on for about 7 minutes, so it's one of the longer single movement works on the album. The usual beautiful balance between melody and accompaniment is heard here. Tension is well sustained over the 7-minute length, but by now we know we're in the hands of a highly skilled player, even by professional standards. Lovely, feather light, last arpeggiated chord, a lovely send-off. All right, if you're a harp fan, you have to hear this. It's beautifully played, and it may be, as I said, the best recorded harp album I've ever heard. It's a keeper for me. I plan on listening to it often. The theme of Nightscapes works well for the harp. Excellent program. This is like ideal to even fall asleep to if you want to do that. But it's worth paying attention to as well. Highly, highly recommended, especially if you like the harp.
Yeah, even if you, I don't know if there's a lot of people who would say, I'm a harp fan. But
some are. No, I've met a lot of people who are. Yeah.
Even with an open mind, or you don't have a good idea of what solo harp could be like. Even within this theme of, nighttime, so to speak, there's a lot of variety of music here to keep you actively listening for various changes. And then so you get the appeal of what the harp can do with compositions written specifically for it. But I found the extra charm of the piano works, particularly the Chopin, that you probably would be familiar with if you're a classical music listener. But they get an extra charm on the harp, getting that little special character of the different types of attack that are possible, the different sustain, and so you get to appreciate the unique sort of tonal characteristics and technique and attack that the harp can provide. So overall, a really entertaining and engaging recording. You might think, just a harp for all of these pieces. Trust me, you'll be drawn in and interested to the end.
Yeah, this is an amazing program. I liked it a lot. Really well done. All right, and for our last sound spectacular, we have Ravel, orchestral works, performed by, and this is really what drew me, Sinfonia of London, conducted by John Wilson. This is on a Chandos SACD, which makes it even better, so it's in that nice DSD sound if you got the capabilities to play that.
Yeah, I should say this is I was interested in this because this is one of the best recordings I've heard in a while, sound quality wise, and apparently it's not a native DSD recording. It is a high resolution recording, but I actually, in looking up reviews of this, there were some people complaining about the recording. And what they were complaining about was that the soft passages were too soft. And what investigating a little bit more, what I've basically deduced is that this recording has, almost maybe zero at all compression in it, which is just wonderful for classical music. So it has a really expanded dynamic range. From the softest passages to the loud, you're going to get the real experience of actually, being in front of an orchestra. Maybe the best that can be captured on recorded media as far as that full dynamic range goes. So if you can sit in a silent room with a great sound system or headphones and block out all the other noise, you're going to get a real sonic experience with this album. It is just a fabulous recording, and the performances are great too. But we'll get into that. But this probably sticks out so far this year, certainly as the best sounding recording that I've heard.
Yeah, let's give some credit to the recording producer, Brian Pidgeon, and the sound engineer, Ralph Cousins, and assistant engineer, Alex James. Man, this is really an amazing sounding recording. Yeah. Indeed, without compression, you're going to want... this is one of those recordings where you have to... I feel like I have to put it on a special shelf so that I'll listen to it when the heater goes off and before the air conditioning comes on. In the springtime and the autumn, you have this 2-week period before
no background sounds.
Not ideal to listen to in the car. Let's just put it that way, with all that road noise. No, you don't want to hear this in the car.
Or your headphones on the subway with the windows open or something. No.
But you could put your headphones on in your house and get a really great experience from that. Indeed, I'm looking at this, and it doesn't say anything about DSD on the album. It just says that it's SAC. Oh, it does say DSD.
No, I think it says high-res 24-bit 96 kilohertz 5-channel recording. So it's a true, I believe, looking at the CD backing, it's a true multi-channel recording. It's not sort of a remixed version of that. So you do get a true surround sound on the SACD. But I mean, I just listened to the FLAC Deezer recording of it, and it's just astounding on that too. So however you listen to it, if you listen to it in an uncompressed capacity, you're going to realize the true dynamic nature of this recording. Fabulous.
Yeah, I think the last really great sounding recording that we heard was also by this ensemble in the Respighi works, right? The Pines of Rome Fountain. That was the same too.
Oh, really? Okay.
Same
that's
ensemble,
positively explosive, that recording. Yeah.
So
it will bring the walls down.
If I were you, listener, I would just go to some music site or to your whatever you stream from and type in a Sinfonia of London John Wilson and just listen to all of the recordings that come down. Yeah. The funny thing is I've programmed this to talk about tonight, and they've just released a new one. This only came out 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and they've already released a new one of German works by Richard Strauss and Erich Wolfgang Korngold and Franz Schracker, who we talked about on that recording that you liked from last year that you mentioned as one of your top 10, the Zemlinsky.
Oh, yeah.
With Petrenko, conducted by Vasily Petrenko.
Yeah, I enjoyed those a lot.
So we're going to have to talk about yet another John Wilson album in a few weeks, probably. Yeah. We'll have to see. Yeah.
I really like what they're doing with the sound. It's not
the
compromising anything. They want it to be heard, in the full dynamic range, which is great.
All right, the first work on this is La Valse. Now, this is, I've been reading a lot about this work lately because Ravel himself said that it's set in 1855, and it's sort of like this spinning waltz that it just spins out of control at the end. But the piece was begun in around 1909, 1908, and he finally finished it in 1920. Like, he wrote sketches for it back before the war. The entirety of World War I passed, and then it finally got its first performance in 1920. And he claimed that the war didn't influence it at all. It was just like an image. But people have always interpreted it as being, influenced by the war. And I hear it that way too. How can you not? It's just sort of it has this really brutal ending.
Yeah, those cacophonous waves of sound at the end are just...
Yeah, and not only that, Ravel died in around 1937, 36, and then World War II started 3 years later and was even more brutal. So this work just gained in. Then now suddenly it seemed like he was predicting the future, sort of, So so the work has picked up a lot of meaning that Ravel claims he didn't intend, but as someone who's done creative work myself, there are all sorts of things that can be read in your work that you don't even notice are there. I mean, you intend to put it there, but the subconscious puts a lot of stuff in there that wants to be expressed that maybe you're not consciously aware of.
That's scary.
Well, that's the way we all are. It's not just it's just that artists embrace it. All right, so this work I wrote right away has a wide dynamic range. It assembles itself into a waltz from the opening fragmentary figures. It's really cool, actually, and it starts very, very quietly. I mean, you really need to... I wouldn't turn it up because it gets pretty loud, but just have a very quiet room when you listen to this. This piece, to be effective, needs momentum above all, as all waltzes do. And the entire waltz rhythm is assembled after we hear the harp glissando. There's a harp glissando. We hear a variation on the theme by the oboe, then high violins, then flutes. The theme gets pompous with the heavy brass and timpani. The violins smooth the theme out and glide into the next variation. Clarinets and cello pick up the theme. Fantastic orchestration throughout. So you have great sound quality, and you have just this fantastic Ravel orchestration in this work. This is really just something to... really just exult in. It's just such a fantastic sounding recording, and it's great orchestration.
Yeah.
Everything about this is fantastic, really. Okay, so the piece goes on. We revisit some earlier themes, and we start hearing a chromaticism in the cellos, and the chromaticism in this work is sort of meaning like all the notes are played in half steps. There's no real sense of a key. This is representing the deterioration of the waltz, and by association, which Ravel claims he didn't mean, the deterioration of Western civilization itself. So this work can kind of be thought of in that way. Ravel said, well, he didn't specifically say it wasn't about that, but he said it's just about his love of the waltz. Anyway, he reorchestrates the second half which starts at about the 9-minute 16-second part. We hear the themes again, led by different solo instruments. The waltz begins to whirl unstoppably until at 10 minutes there's a crash. And the coda, which is kind of like an extra part tacked onto the end, is a danse macabre, not an elegant waltz. And the work ends with a measure of 4/4, so we completely lose the waltz time in the very last measure. As the music becomes desperate, trying to assert itself as a waltz, but the brutality and decay hidden in the increasingly chromatic harmony take over and erode the rhythm as well, and there's just no more waltz. Okay. Maybe it's happening to us now, although I guess it already happened a few times. I enjoyed this performance. It's a great sound, makes an impact. Well judged. Okay. Next we get to a ballet. Actually, La Valse has an interesting story. Ravel wanted it performed as a ballet, and he played it to Serge Diaghilev, the leader of the Ballet Russe, what do you call it, the impresario, let's say, and Diaghilev refused it. He said it's a portrait of a ballet, not a ballet, and that made Ravel really mad. So he years later he met Diaghilev again. He wouldn't shake his hand. Diaghilev challenged him to a duel, and his friends talked Diaghilev out of it. So the two of them never met or spoke again, which is really sad because Ravel did write a great ballet for Diaghilev called Daphnis and Chloe, which is a fantastic score. Yeah. Really just at the peak of his powers of using orchestral color. This work, Ma Mère, does that too. This was written in 1911, and it was commissioned by Jacques Rouchet for his Théâtre des Arts. Jacques Rouchet was sort of another impresario. This had nothing to do with Diaghilev. All right, so this would be the centerpiece of the album, and it's a really beautiful work. Ma Mère is Mother Goose. So these are the stories from Charles Perrault and others, the French stories that we know, like the Sleeping Beauty and those sorts of things. Okay, this starts with a prelude, and it's gently in the woodwinds. Ravel's startling orchestral timbres come out in this richly realized performance to recording. At a minute 23 seconds, we hear the Sleeping Beauty theme, which will feature in the second tableau, which is track 4. Beautiful strings in this. The track ends with the opening theme in low, foreboding woodwinds. It's lost its sweetness, because I guess the beauty is now sleeping. Wild bird sounds lead to the first tableau, I guess sort of a warning. I should mention, Marmelois was originally written for 2 young girls to play at the piano. It was a piano duet. And we've heard it, too. We heard it on the French Duets album from last year with Stephen Osborne and Paul Lewis. All right, that was on one of the first episodes we ever did, maybe number 3 or number 4. And that's a great recording, too, on the Hyperion label. Yeah. But here it's expanded. And this premiere, the first tableau, the first scene, Dans du Rouet and Scène, which is a spinning wheel dance scene, is the only movement that's originally composed for this ballet. This is not in the piano duet version. Also, the piano duet version, the movements are in a different order than here. It starts the story of the Sleeping Beauty pricking her finger on the spinning wheel's spindle. So we get the dance first, and then there's kind of like this dark moment where you hear her prick her fingers. Just after the 2-minute mark, you can hear that happen, or at the moment when it happens. The music really darkens. There's wonderful detail captured in this recording, and that's important for Ravel's very precise, subtle scoring. Second scene, the pavane of the Sleeping Beauty, the Belle au Bois Dormant. This story comes from Charles Perrault, if anyone wants to read the original. This gorgeous melody. Now, he didn't write the story. He's retelling them from, I guess, older sources. And we know his version today. This is how we've received it, because he wrote them all down. This gorgeous melody led off the original piece for piano 4 hands. And it's got a nice slow pace here in its orchestrated version. Possibly due to the orchestration, it's slowed down, and we're allowed time to luxuriate in the beautiful sounds. There's an interlude that starts around 2 minutes and 35 seconds, and this leads to the Beauty and the Beast movement, which is next. I like the effect of the string instruments bouncing their bows off the strings to get that dun-dun sound. And then there's like a glissando in the strings, too. Really inventive orchestration from Ravel. Third tableau, third theme, Les Entretiens de la Belle et de la Bête. This is the Conversations of the Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast, by the way, was written by Madame la Prince de Beaumont. And it's her only famous story, really. It's become a real classic. It's not very long either. The opening clarinet and elegant 3/4 rhythm represents Beauty's words. The Beast is heard in the bassoon at 1 minute and 5 seconds, and he doesn't get a nice dance theme because he's big and ugly. He's heavy and seemingly clumsy, and his theme falls chromatically. It's not even musical, but gets off some nice, reedy, low bassoon notes. A crisis is reached at the 2 minute and 10 second mark. We hear the Beauty and the Beast speak at the same time at 2 minutes and 20 seconds, a favorite technique of Ravel. He does it in a lot of his piano pieces as well. He'll often combine contrasting themes like this. A second crisis is reached at the 3 minute mark where Beauty agrees to marry the Beast, I guess. At 3 minutes and 4 seconds, we hear a harp glissando, and at that moment, the Beast transforms into a handsome prince. So there's your cue there. You can listen ahead at the 3 minute and 4 second mark. His theme is now played by a cello, so he's kind of handsomer now, not the ugly bassoon. Sounds more elegant on the cello. The bassoon, of course, can be pretty, but is used to an uglier effect here. There's another transition, and we hear the Tom Thumb tableau, and the scene that's happening here in the fourth scene, Petit Poucet, Tom Thumb, also known as Hop O' My Thumb. We have such dumb names for these stories in English. You know, one of the stories not in this ballet in French is Le Maître Chat, or also Le Chat Beauté, which means the master cat or the booted cat. But in English, we gave it the appalling name Puss in Boots.
Horrible.
Why did they do that? It's actually got a good name in French. Why didn't they just translate the name Puss? It's not even and in. It's there's an apostrophe N. Yeah. Oh, I just hate it so much. It's a good story. I like the story. Anyway, read it in French. It's a good story in English too. Just take a marker, just cross Puss in Boots out and write the Master Cat. All right, it'll be better. All right. Anyway, back to Petit Poucet or Tom Thumb. Or Hop Oh My Thumb. God. Jeez. Tom Thumb is so better. Petit Poucet, by the way, I think literally means little pocket. Okay, I think. Poche, I don't know. Poucet, I'm not really sure. Little thumb. I'm not really sure what this means, actually. Anyway, let's take a look here. We hear the rising strings indicating Tom Thumb dropping breadcrumbs so he and his brothers can find their way out of the woods. They've been banished too. I've heard the oboe solo taken more elegantly, but it's good here. Very present. By the way, the recording of this work to have is Charles Dutoit and the Orchestra Symphonique de Montréal from the 1970s, I believe. It's a beautiful recording. It's although older than this, but the orchestra positively glows. And this is probably a better recording, but those performances really are special, especially in this work. So I'd recommend that. All the tempos are taken beautifully, and it's one of those albums that I've absorbed so completely that I really think of that as the ideal. So I'm always judging other performances against that. There are reassuring cadences in this opening, but at 2 minutes we hear the birds imitated by wind instruments. You can't miss them really, because it's kind of harsh sounding. They come and eat the breadcrumbs, so the brothers can't find their way out of the woods. There are some extremely quiet passages in this movement that are really magical, and the segment ends with the boys lost in the woods. We don't hear the end of the story. We just leave them there. Anyway, there's another transition, this time with a nice harp intro at 3 minutes and 35 seconds. We hear the beginnings of the gorgeous harp accompaniment to the next fifth tableau, and there's also a celesta to add some magic. Okay, I just want to look. Yeah, little thumb. Poucet is a thumb called little thumb. Okay, in French, petit poucet. Okay, the fifth is Laideronette, Impératrice de Pagode. Laide means you're ugly, so Laideronette is little ugly girl. Empress of the Pagodas. Now, this character comes from Madame d'Aulnoy's story, The Green Serpent, Le Serpent Vert. And Madame d'Aulnoy is interesting because she actually coined the term conte de fées, which we translate to English as fairy tales. That's her word. And we still use that word today, so good on her. This is probably the most beautifully orchestrated movement in the work. In the story, Laideronette doesn't necessarily go to China, but it sounds like she's in China here with all the kind of angular sort of, I guess, Oriental, or maybe we can say Orientalist rhythms and melodies. But she is in a faraway land in the story. It doesn't signify where, so it may as well be China, I guess. We hear her servants over a pentatonic. That's so pretty. It's an ancient-sounding theme. They're preparing her bath. She arrives for it at the minute and 10-second mark. I always wonder how they do this in the actual ballet. I mean, she gets into a bath. I mean, does she dance at all? I don't know. It doesn't sound like a terribly happy occasion by the sound of it, or maybe it just sounds regal, because her bath section really slows down. She is far away from home, and she was a pretty little girl, but she was like, an evil spell was cast on her, and she was made ugly by some sorceress in the story. The theme of the servants and the empress are overlapped, and we magically go back to the opening theme of the servants. There's another transition, and we get to the apotheosis, Le Jardin Féerique. This is where the Sleeping Beauty story is resolved. In the ballet, the Sleeping Beauty is awakened in this section, which is the apotheosis. Then we get a section in the original piano duet of A Fairy Garden, where only the innocence of children is welcome. And I love the way the music hands us that innocence so we can enter too. Ravel was really good at this sort of conjuring the sense of innocence in general. This is really one of his best scores. The orchestration here is phenomenal. A fantastic ending to a magical ballet score. This movement starts quietly in the strings and builds slowly to an exhilarating climax, full of orchestral detail, lots of chiming percussion instruments. There's some gorgeously orchestrated hushed passages in that build-up. The only thing about this particular performance is the ending is taken fairly quickly and ends abruptly, and I feel like it loses some of its enchantment when it does that. Dutoit does this so much better. I'd have liked him to take a more leisurely approach, meaning Wilson here, to the end so we could bask in the glorious orchestration. Let's see. Also, Dutoit, at the very end of his recording, does something really magical that I'm not really entirely sure is in the score. The upper layer of instruments suddenly disappears so that you're left with just the low kind of strings and winds and brass. It's really magical. That doesn't happen here, though. Is it a different version of the score? I really don't know. Otherwise, this is a solid, beautifully recorded version of the score. I just felt like the last section was a bit of a letdown.
There's lots of nice tone colors here.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Just burst out of... it's like looking at all the fruits in the produce section or something like that. Just coming out at you.
In a tropical country, right?
Yeah. In Thailand or something,
Yeah. Or as Burt Reynolds said in the movie The End, so it's like Walt Disney throwing up.
That's freaking goofy. Yeah.
All that color. Oh, I didn't mean to ruin that for you, listener, but because this is a beautiful score. I really love it.
Yeah, really nice.
Anyway, all right. Anyway, track 9, we get into some piano works that were transcribed for orchestra. This is Alborada del Gracioso, composed in 1904 to 1905. It's the fourth movement of the Miroir piano works, which I love to death. I just love those to the skies, all of them. He orchestrated, Ravel orchestrated 2 of them, and we hear one of them here. Alborada was orchestrated in 1918. This one is, let's see, it has a Spanish theme. Gracioso is gracioso, I guess you'd say, is a jester. And Ravel wrote quite a few Spanish-tinged works, including an entire opera called Le Espagnol. Here, the orchestra, like the piano in the original version, is made to sound like a giant guitar, with all sorts of repeated notes, repeating bass lines, and plucking effects. And you get the impression that maybe the strings are a little broken, too, just from some of the way, the ferociousness with which some of the plucking effects come through. It's really an amazing realization. The song comes in the middle section, starting at 1 minute and 50 seconds. It's sung by the bassoon here, with the rest of the orchestra emulating the gentle strumming of the guitar as he does his alborada. By the way, in English, that would be an aubade. An aubade is a dawn song, whereas a serenade would be an evening song. Or an aubade, I guess we'd say in English. We don't hear these too much, but you wake up your honey with a nice... tune in the morning. Why don't you try that and see what happens to you today? People used to like that one time, though.
I know it'll happen.
In Italy, even then, neighbors used to throw flower pots at the guy, but he didn't care. Yeah. They still do that today in Italy. If you're making a lot of noise, if you're making a lot of noise and you're in a residential neighborhood, people will throw pots of water on you.
Oh.
From the upper floors. They'll do that. I've seen it happen.
At least it's water. Wow.
Yeah, they just want you to go away, basically. I guess if you're caterwauling to your honey with a guitar, they'll throw other things. Anyway. So we get back to the first section at the 5 minute and 10 second mark, which is more raucous than it was at the beginning. Beautifully realized orchestral detail on this gorgeous recording. How many times am I going to say this? This is a fantastic album. Okay, next, one of my favorite works of all time. It's also a piano work that I've played, actually, and it's not easy, even though it's slow, because you need, giant hands to play it. Pavane pour un enfant défunt. composed in 1899 and orchestrated in 1910. That's really a long time from there. A pavane, an infant defunt, is a dead Spanish princess, so it's got this Spanish theme, and also just the fact that it's a pavane means it has like a Baroque kind of feeling to it too. This is kind of shaped like a rondo because we hear the same theme 3 times, but it's differently orchestrated each time. The orchestration changes subtly for each return of the main theme, and it sounds kind of old-fashioned too, with some beautiful harmonies in it. One of the things that attracted me to it on the piano was the gorgeous harmonies used in the cadence. There are a lot of really great, colorful notes in it. Yeah, get yourself a quiet space and bathe in these sounds. Really fantastic. Okay, tracks 11 through 18 is another solo piano work that was orchestrated. Valse Noble et Sentimentale. This was orchestrated in 1912. I think it may have been written in 1911 for the piano, so he orchestrated this one right away. Now, this one, it was composed completely before the war, so there's none of this darkness to this one. It really is, genuinely, just a set of different waltzes.
Yeah, and they're all very dreamy, and they flow into each other. Yeah. It's sort of like this endless flowing dance that's really relaxing and
they're lovely works. And not only that, okay, first of all, the name comes from Schubert's works Valse Noble and Valse Sentimentale. So Schubert wrote a lot of these sort of sets of waltzes, and the waltz was a big Vienna thing. Schubert lived in Vienna, so of course he would take to that. Ravel loved this tradition too. One of the things you want to notice in this, and even in La Valse too, he uses this technique too in La Valse to indicate the decay of the waltz, is the use of hemiola. Now, hemiola is like when you have a 3/4 rhythm, the melodic line will be playing 2 dotted quarter notes, so it'll sound like 2 played over the 3. So you have 2 different sort of almost time signatures or rhythms going at the same time, and he'll use that a lot in these works, and it makes it really appealing. So you're not just hearing this annoying waltz rhythm throughout. Well, you are, but you're not hearing that, the Johann Strauss kind of thing, like forever. Those are really catchy, though. I shouldn't say anything. Anyway, this starts out Modere, starts off explosively with a waltz rhythm, like ba-da-dun-dun-dun-dun, and kind of sounds like you're at the Moulin Rouge or something. Then we'll hear a series of other waltzes of different character. All right. Second, Assez Lente. This is a gentle waltz. We can hear a lot of the hemiola in this one against the 3-beat waltz rhythm. The third movement, Modéré, is my personal favorite. It's taken very slowly here, and pleasingly so. There's more hemiola beguiling the ear. There's some beautiful chime effects in the orchestration at 1 minute and 15 seconds, followed by glowing light strings playing the theme. The Assez Animé, 4th movement, is a little more animated than the previous waltz, and it has a kind of sweeping quality to it. There's a bit more of a whirl to it. 5th movement, Presque Lente, starts off not sounding like a waltz at all. It sounds pretty earnest and quiet with lots of hemiola. The 6th movement, more hemiola, like more cowbell, right? All right, Assez Vif, 6th movement. This one's got a bit of a whirl to it, but it's quick and over before a minute has passed. The 7th waltz, Moins Vif, has a very tentative opening to this longish waltz. Then the actual waltz feel begins at about 35 seconds. The whirl begins at around a minute, and a climax is reached at 1 minute 10, 1 minute 20 seconds. There's another episode featuring fluttering flutes, which is a gorgeous effect. Listen, if you really want to hear this type of effect used to its perfection, listen to the sunrise or daybreak section of the Daphnis and Chloe ballet. It's just really mesmerizing. One of my favorite sections of music ever. Okay, this one has a big climax recalling the beginning, and then we get an epilogue where it recalls all of the waltzes we previously heard. We hear them in sort of fragmentary things, and they're all in a different order. It's almost like someone who's been to the party recalling all the dances afterward. It has this sense of memory, and it's just kind of drifting away, sort of. It's not all there. There's something weary about the movement, too, as though the party's over and only memory remains. Finally, track 19, Say it with me, everybody. Bolero. Okay, everybody's favorite Ravel work. Okay, there's not really much happening in this. Well, actually there is, but not much of it is like structural. All we really get is it's about a 15-minute work. It's a long crescendo, and we get brilliant reorchestration of the theme, which never changes. Every time it repeats. So if you want to be interested in this piece, you got to listen to who's playing the theme.
Yeah.
Because it changes every time. And it's not just one instrument. Sometimes it's several instruments in harmony, and it's really magical.
I thought this version, there's lots of versions. I thought this one was particularly well paced.
Oh, I thought so too. Yeah.
What I noticed was the sax melody, which is unique because you don't often hear sax in classical music, and then the trombone. Those versions are particularly sexed up, like compared
I guess that's true. Yeah.
To other versions, there's a little bit of too much smarm in them, and it's not overboard, but I felt like they're maybe having a little too much fun. On those parts in this version, but I got a smile out of those anyways.
Yeah,
no, I got a smile out of it. Yeah,
in a work that's just been beaten to death like this one is. Okay, so this does come up sounding fresh here. I really enjoyed this. Actually,
yeah, definitely.
The rhythm remains sharply detailed throughout too. Notice how the melody is handed off to different instruments in the orchestra. Pace is kept steady. And this winds up being a satisfying performance of the piece. I was especially happy to hear the timbral detail of the rhythm instruments peeking out of the texture too. So we got to hear them. So all in all, fantastic recorded sound and overall excellent interpretations and performances.
Yeah.
I still kind of prefer Dutoit in interpretation, I think. But I enjoyed this a lot. And do yourself a favor and just listen to other after you hear this, listen to other Sinfonia of London and John Wilson recordings because they're all just fantastic.
Yeah, this is a real treat for the ears. I like it. Does due diligence to all the wonderful timbres, the tonal palette of Ravel. You got you got the big box of crayons. Not the 16 or the 24. You got that big one.
The 64. The
64.
Crayola crayons. Yeah.
All the oil paints, the whole canvas is there. Yeah, all the different ones. Even if you can't name them, like
umber.
Yeah. I have a very poor vocabulary for actual visual colors, but I can recognize them.
I'm not very good at visual colors either.
Yeah, I hear them, and so they're all really clear here, brought out nicely. And I thought all of the overall approach to Ravel was. How can I say, unhurried tempos. The music unfolds as it should, so that you get a natural presentation, especially in the waltzes that flow one to another. I liked the Boléro. I thought it was well paced. It was unhurried, and even the finish comes out just as a natural statement.
I generally dread having to hear that piece, but I did like it here.
Yeah, I liked it here. And I said, I got a kick out of the sax and trombone in there. Yeah. I liked all of these a lot. Like you say, there's other performances to compare to, like the Dutoit. But here, the sonic delights and just the overall presentation will make this a winner. Put this on your best sound system. Your best listening time, just to get the
relax
the best
into your sound bath.
Sound bath, and any audio files. Yeah, this is one of the better recordings I've heard so far this year. You're going to really get a treat with this one. So check it out.
Okay, and there it is for classical music for this week, the beginning of April.
Nice start to spring. Yeah, Boléro. We'll get.
We're doing okay so far for spring. We had the Ranitsky, and then we had the. There was one from last week too that was really great. I don't remember. Anyway,
get the hunt, and get your Boléro, your juices flowing for spring. And we're gonna take you over to the funky side this week. Because,
we were funky in jazz this week, weren't we?
It's organ time. My organ list is bursting.
That's what I say to my girlfriend.
Yeah. I have a really long list of recordings. It's up to like 25 pages now. But the organ category is growing. I actually added another one I would have included this week that just came out, or I just became aware of today, that came out on April 1st, which was too late to make this week's deadline. And there's another one that I didn't include just because I thought I had to pick and choose. So there's the new Smoke Sessions records, Larry Goldings and Peter Bernstein recording. And I almost picked that one. But
you can still do it in the future, right?
Yeah, we could. But, I like to mix things up on here, especially I like to give new artists who, may not get noticed right away a mention, as we've done on previous episodes. And so I thought I'd take a chance with one here, and I kind of enjoyed it. And especially because I like this sort of organ renaissance that's going on in jazz.
Yeah, me too.
There's a lot of organs showing up, which is a really good thing. So here we have debut recording, appropriately titled First Shot. And this is on JMS Productions. And we don't have an organ trio, rather we have an organ quartet. But the leader is the guitarist, Pierre Manetti, French guitarist, although sounds like an Italian last name, as do some of the other musicians on here. So this is sort of, kind of pan-European kind of thing, maybe. But Pierre Manetti is on his debut album here. However, he does come from a musical family. He's the youngest son of a well-known guitarist, Romane Manetti, and his brother, Richard, is also a guitarist. And he's won a special Young Talent Prize as a guitarist, and this is his debut leader recording after being a sideman and appearing as a musician on other venues. And so here we've got his debut, which he's decided to do with Hammond organ, which was what caught my attention and made it onto my list here. So here we've got Manetti on electric guitar, Christophe Cravero on organ, Laurent Locoratolo on drums. So these French, kind of Italian-sounding names here. And surprisingly,
I guess they all went over with the Mona Lisa back in Leonardo da Vinci's day.
So normally we would have an organ trio, guitar, organ, drums, and the organ would handle the bass with the bass pedals. But in this case, we've got electric bass, Henri Dorina on electric bass, which gives a kind of unique character to the performances here. So we begin with the title track, First Shot, and sort of the approach here on this tune is dual guitar and organ together on the melody line, which gives reinforcement to that. And right out of the head of the tune, Manetti breaks into a solo, and you'll notice that he has really tight articulation and really rapid playing, rapid phrasing. This guy's got a lot of technique. And underneath all of it, you'll feel that extra push of the electric bass that gives a little bit more articulation and funky possibilities. Of course, you can play bass pedals on Hammond. They don't come through and cut through quite as much as the attack on electric bass. So we've got the electric bass here, lends a little different character.
The organ bass kind of has an odd sort of cutoff, because when you let go of the pedal, you usually just kind of let it go and it stops immediately. That doesn't really happen on a regular bass. Yeah,
so there's a little different kind of possibilities with electric bass versus the pedals. So the electric bass puts a stamp on this recording sound. Cravero has an organ solo here. Nice fast lines, good swells on the keyboard. I looked him up. He's mainly has a reputation as a pianist and has several recordings of his own too, but I couldn't find anything else with him on organ. But he seems to have a good organ concept and stylizations adapted to the instrument. Locoratoro keeps things tight with cymbals and drum fills here. They repeat the melody and the whole tune's over kind of quickly, under 4 minutes for the opener. Track 2, appropriately titled Groove, and that's a hand-clapping groove here. We get that hand-clapping thing to go in. Electric bass adds some popping accents to help that groove out. Manetti takes the choppy melody over some nice swelling organ chords. The next section has organ guitar unison lines, which worked well in the first track. Manetti breaks out of it into a solo with a really nice overtone riff into some rapid lines, a little more harmonic exploration on this tune. Crivero gets a funky solo on organ, repeated notes and tight chords. It's a very funky track. Good feeling. Get your hands clapping on that. Track 3, Olivia. This one's got a funky bass groove and a subdivided light drum beat. The guitar and organ again float a cruising. I say this a lot on these organ tunes. It's like this. I call it a cruising melody. You know, you get that, and it's like you feel like you're driving along.
I have a lot of these odd kind of terms that I use too.
Yeah, like window down by the ocean and you're driving, you know, or the top down in a convertible. I said this groove was tropical, actually. Yeah, tropical in a convertible driving along. There's a couple other tunes in the recordings tonight that I felt get that kind of feeling. It just works really well with organ. There's a descending line that leads to a break. And then the groove changes. It's slower and heavier that comes out. Crivero picks out a well-articulated melody into a flowing solo. Then he adds nice swelling chords that Dorina fills with some, popping bass kind of things. You know, you're not going to get that on bass pedals of the organ. So the electric bass shows off a bit in here. Crivero gets some solo time that works into holds with drum solo fills and back into the subdivided original melody section. So the rhythm changes up through the different parts of the song, and it slows to the end with some cool guitar fills. Track 4 is called Opening. It's a kind of dexterous, rapid guitar lines over a slow-moving organ line that make an intro to the tune. It breaks into a melody with another funky groove featuring big downbeat accents on phrases. Manetti breaks into a solo, ripping out rapid melodic lines, and then Crivero's organ solo gets a little Bach fugue in spots. It sounds somewhat classical there. They give a taste of the intro and melody again for the ending phrase. Track 5 is called Sculpture. This has a nice relaxed drum groove with a rim click to it. Funky bass lines and organ chord hits flow under Manetti's rhythmic melody phrases. Manetti gets some nice pitch bend play in his solo before he gets into more rapid ripping lines with lots of speed. And Crivero gets a light and high organ tone for his solo on this one, working into some really fast sextuplet phrases. They're 6 to a beat here. Kind of impressive. And they get back to the melody groove to the end. Locoratoro gets a lot of nice work on the busy beat in this tune. Track 6 is called Fugitive Song. You get a drum intro into a different kind of groove here that has lots of breaks. Guitar and organ working together on the melody. Manetti has dizzying lines in his solo here. Lots of speed. Crivero's fleet as well, getting some nice distortion in the swelling tone of his organ. And they work back into the melody, leaving Locoratoro with some drum fill spots. Track 7, Le Petit Caillou. I guess that means the little pebble.
Right.
Probably cool unless it's in your shoe. But there's a solo guitar intro. Nice organ fade in. Manetti takes the melody first and then Crivero. It gets a little dizzying in all the permutations of it. There's a break and a reset for Manetti to take a solo, and he concentrates on shorter, tightly articulated melodic phrases here. Crivero gets an organ solo as well, and Locoratoro has a busy tom rhythm backing throughout the tune. Track 8, Giacomo. Super funky beat on this one, syncopated and popping bass underneath, swelling organ.
How about that?
Yeah.
You don't hear the slap bass too much anymore.
Not too much, no.
Yeah.
It goes back to the 90s since we heard that. Manetti plays bluesy melody, joined by the organ sometimes, but getting some cool double stops on the guitar. There's a break for the solo, and then Manetti keeps it funky and rhythmic with repeated tones and bluesy riffs. And then it's time for a funky poppin' bass solo.
Yeah.
We really get a lot of that in this tune.
It's the 90s again, or the 80s, really.
Now, I don't know how you pronounce this in French. Cause we got
ambiguïté.
Ambiguïté. So ambiguities.
Ambiguïté.
Yes. Something in between. Hard to define.
Yeah.
Rapid repeating notes. In an organ intro, it swells into mysterious minor start for the melody. So nice organ and guitar interplay here. Some tasty light picking from Manetti. Interesting chord changes make for engaging backing for more speedy runs in Manetti's solo and more of a swelling mood in Cravaro's solo. It's an exciting tune, and they have some fun with the ending hits on it too. And we end up with a tune called Red Naomi. This has an alternating organ chord intro. Manetti carries the likable melody over the 6/8 rhythm.
This is the first time we hear this rhythm on this album, right?
But
it really stuck out for me.
The final melody section of the main melody has a contrasting darker mood that shifts. And then Cravaro gets the solo first, but the rhythm sort of changes. The 6/8 sort of evolves into a 4-beat feel with the bass moving and quarter notes over the solo section. Manetti's solo has a lot of fast runs mixed with fluid melodic ideas, and then when they come back to the melody, it's got that 6/8 feel again. So the 6/8 is relegated to the bookending melody sections, whereas the solo sections have more of a 4-beat feel to it. So a nice debut release. Manetti has super fast chops. He's obviously got this in his blood from a musical family. I like his fluid concept, nice guitar tone. The original tunes here have a lot of variety, but the focus is on groove, which should be to have the organ in there. Cravaro's organ work is nice too. The decision to use electric bass, I guess he wanted to have that kind of more syncopated drive and popping things other than just organ pedals. I'd like to hear Cravaro on an organ alone and see what his bass pedals add to it.
Right.
But yeah, overall, as a total thing, I thought it's a nice debut and a guitarist who shows a lot of technique and promise, and nice for choosing organ. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I thought he had a lot of catchy themes in these tracks too. And it's a debut album, so this is probably why. But I felt like the solos, they're not really stretched out. They could have been longer. Everything is very compact.
Yep.
And the tracks are really short. Red Naomi, the last piece, was my favorite. It was also the most substantial of all the tracks because it goes on for a while. Everybody gets a little bit of a chance to stretch out a little bit. Yeah. So that's the only thing. I guess we'll hear longer solos as it goes on. I think you just want to make your mark on your first album. But very appealing. I liked it. Yeah. And I love the organ. He's a good player. Yeah. Nice to hear the slap bass too.
It's good. Like you say, he got 10 tunes out there, and a bunch of them are less than 4 minutes. Even openings less than 3 minutes. So it's kind of, I guess he had these compositions. It's all original material. He wanted to get them out there. He could have cut back to 7 or 8 tunes and extended the solos.
Yeah, whatever. But even so, I mean, it's still a short. 10 tracks is still a pretty short album. Yeah, I think it comes in at around 40 minutes or so.
Yeah, but but nice first effort.
I like that.
We're looking forward to hear what comes next from him.
Me too.
Now, building up. This is an album I was waiting to hear, and oh boy, I really like this one. We've got 4 brothers on Chicken Coop record label.
Oh yeah, where it belongs. I have to say.
Exactly.
What was that album by?
Back to the Chicken Shack.
Back to the Chicken Shack, right?
Jimmy Smith.
Right.
Yeah.
Jimmy
Smith. We've got the organ quartet by organist Tony Monaco. Now, Monaco was originally an accordion player from childhood. And he was influenced by Jimmy Smith when he was young. He switched over to organ after he heard Jimmy Smith playing, and actually got some mentoring from Smith. And then later, he made his debut album collaborating with Joey De Francisco, and it was called A New Generation, Paisanos on the New B3.
That's what it was called? Yeah. Paisanos?
Paisanos.
Oh my God. Paisanos on the new B3. Yeah. Boy.
Hey.
All right. Hey.
Paisan. Where's your Hammond? And so he began recording from then. And in the early 2000s, he got some notoriety also working with the great Pat Martino on guitar.
Ah, yes.
And so he was also placed high in critic polls, reaching the top 5 jazz organists from the International Critics Poll 2005 to 2011. And so here he is with this new recording, Four Brothers.
Do you know where the Four Brothers theme comes from? Because he uses this title quite a few times on this album.
Well, I'm not sure, but that composition is his own original one. But also the Brothers 4, which is track 7, we'll get to, is a Don Patterson tune. So I don't know if he just made it because he's got this quartet or what the inspiration is. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And they're all brothers in jazz or something.
Brothers in jazz. So on this recording, we've got Tony Monaco, Hammond B3, Willie B. Barthel III on drums, Edwin Bayard, tenor and soprano saxophones, Kevin Turner on guitar. So we begin with the title track, Four Brothers. This one has a snare drum intro into the bluesy bounce of a melody. Monaco and Bayard double the cheerful melody line on organ and tenor sax. Bayard is up first for a very soulful sax solo with a really fat tone on the tenor. Turner gets a guitar solo. Turner often plays like the contrast on this album because he has a kind of restrained, centered tone. It's kind of compact. But that's not to say that he's not super tasty, as he is here on his licks. Monaco's solo has a lot of rhythmic variety, melodic energy. They do a cute little circus change-up of the rhythm at the end of the melody, and they repeat that and finish with a drum fill and an interesting tritone interval ending. It's a fun little romp to start out the album. Track 2, another Tony Monaco original, You Can Always Count on Me. Guitar and organ set the stage for this one from the intro. It's got that, again, cruising groove. Like, get the top.
There are a lot of those on this one, I think.
And the windows down. You're going to drive along the parkway. Got your shades on. Feels good. Meccano,
and you're driving a giant Cadillac convertible, aren't you? Because this sounds like something you'd hear on the radio in the 1950s, really, this album. The whole sound of this, yeah.
This would have sounded really good in a car that I used to drive, which was a 1978 Cadillac Coupe de Ville.
You drove a Coupe de Ville? No way.
Coupe de Ville, 78, white, with a red vinyl top, white leather interior. And
is that your dad's car or is that yours?
No, it's mine.
You had a Cadillac?
Yeah, 7-liter engine.
Did the ladies like it?
It's
not really a...
Yeah. What?
It's like a middle-aged guy's car. Oh, maybe a convertible.
It was when I had it was a classic because...
Okay. Yeah. In the 70s. I remember those because my dad had Cadillacs.
I didn't drive it in the 70s. I drove it in the 90s.
Anyway. We used to call it the Dadillac.
My friends call it the Pimp Mobile, but
yeah, it kind of is that.
Anyway, it had a 100-watt Delco stereo in it.
That thing could go over deep potholes, and you just wouldn't feel a thing.
Go anywhere,
They don't make cars like that anymore.
No, not in a long time. Anyway, It would have sounded good in that car. Monaco carries the easy melody with funky little fills on guitar from Turner. Bayard joins in on soprano sax on this one, which lifts the melody up with the unique tone of the soprano sax. Monaco really lays down a funky syncopated bass pedal under his solo. Check that out. This guy has some really great footwork.
Yeah, he's got good footwork. Yeah, like I noticed that myself. He really draws
on those keyboards. Yeah. He uses a clean organ tone for the start of his solo that is relaxed and measured out until he kicks up the whirl of that Leslie speaker for a climax. Bayard has an easily swinging soprano solo with some cool riffs, and Turner finishes up with a clearly articulated but flowing guitar solo. After more melody, they riff out for some drum work from Bartel as it fades away. Now, track 3, this is one of the highlights of the album, Más que Nada, the Jorge Ben-Hur tune, which everyone will know from Sergio Mendes. Da, 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 da. Everyone knows that, right?
Oh, yeah.
But this is a really infused version of that. This is super high energy. It's got a sax intro, organ stop time into that famous melody, which Bartel drives along with a really nice drumming. The cymbal work on it is really good. Drives it along. Bayard works the main melody on a fat tenor. This works great on sax. You know, that vocalization that you're used to comes out on tenor. He hands it off to Monaco on the middle section. Then back to Bayard, who blows a gutsy tenor solo, gets up into the high register. Monaco has some really nice bluesy licks and chords that he holds way up high while he works underneath for some soloing under the hold chords. Very cool solo. Turner's guitar solo is bluesy and fluid. Then Bartel gets some drum solo time working the toms a lot over Monaco's vamping chords before they power back in with the melody repeating the tag for a bit at the end. It's a great arrangement of this familiar melody.
Yeah, really exciting too.
Yeah. Track 4, Jan Jan by Mos Davis. This one starts with a funky organ, one-chord organ and guitar groove. The melody is a series of tight unison guitar and organ licks. The second section is sequences of ascending chords. Check out Monaco's funky footwork again on the bass lines here.
Really throughout the album. He's always, man.
Yeah. Really works his feet. Monaco's solo here is super funky, harmonically adventurous, dancing in and out of the chords with some nasty dissonance in spots that sounds great. Bayard bursts in for a tenor solo, and the beat breaks into a fast swing. He really wails on a long high note and aggressive phrases. They hit the building chords for a transition between solos. Turner gets really jazzy out in the chord extensions before tying back in with some bluesy licks. On the melody repeat, they go over the ascending chords for a bit to give Bartel some drum solo fun as well. Track 5, One for Everyone. This is the guitarist's original tune, Kevin Turner. This is a real happy-sounding bluesy tune with a shuffling beat. Organ and guitar share the melody in unison. Turner solos first, lots of tasty bluesy licks and sweet bends. Bayard is more relaxed on tenor here, swinging along easily in his solo. Monaco is bouncy and bluesy, building tension with repeated figures, which climax in big pounding chords up in the higher register. They go around the melody again, and it all ends with a nice sax wail. Then we've got Change of Pace, a really nice one at that. Billy Strayhorn's Lush Life, track 6. Rubato tenor sax and organ intro to this standard. Monaco swells it underneath, gets the Leslie going in the second section, which really whips things up, that change of tonality, getting the kind of vibrato vibration that the Leslie gets. Really nice organ vibrations going on to everything here. Bartel slips in with some brushwork once they get going, and Turner with little guitar fills. Bayard sticks close to the melody most of the way through the tune, getting a little solo space towards the end, while Monaco finds just the right tones and textures for support on the organ. Just a nice, relatively straight play through, but a nice arrangement. Track 7, Brothers 4, Don Patterson tune. Big beat drum intro. Bayard switches to soprano here, and the organ and sax work the repeating riff together over this 12-bar blues. The beat breaks into more of a swing with ride cymbals for Monaco's solo, which is very bluesy and tight. They switch up the beat to the original syncopated feel of the melody for Bayard's soprano solo. He gets more out there with harmonic ideas, but ends up on a repeated kind of pentatonic riff and articulated bluesy lines. Then it's back to swing for Turner's guitar solo that has lots of rhythmic tension and bluesy licks. After the melody comes back again, it fades out with some soft sax doodling. Track 9, Harold Arlen and Johnny Mercer's My Shining Hour, or track 8 rather. Monaco cranks up anticipation with a syncopated chord intro over swinging cymbals. Bayard blows the melody on tenor with a big muscular sound. After a quick solo break, he blows into his solo with a lot of drive and hard swinging phrases. Monaco works a lot of nice melodic ideas and tight chords while keeping a hard driving walking bass line on the pedals beneath. He explodes. I think we got that from Mike Ladone, exploding. Right?
he likes that word.
Explodes into a climax in the upper register. Just that bursting organ with some hammering percussive chords. Turner brings back the cool with his flowing guitar solo. They trade off 8-bar.
He does that throughout the album. He likes that, being that cool kind of low key sort of. He's always changing the feel. I think that's just his style, I guess.
Yeah, I really like it. Turner brings back the cool with the solo, and they trade off 8-bar phrases with sax, organ, and guitar for a time around the form, giving the drums some solo spots. And Bayard comes back to take the melody out for some more improvisation, blowing it hard to the end and getting a static kind of Pharoah Sanders-like crying on the sax at the end. And track 9 is called Four Brothers 2, T-O-O exclamation point. What you've got here is just an alternate take of the title track. It's almost the same exact length, same arrangement, but you got different solos. So you can see here, in the jazz process, what happens in the studio. You start with an arrangement and you got a take, and then they'll often do several of those and compare, what happened in it, which one has the best solos overall, and they'll choose it. And oftentimes, if you get lucky, there's another take that they may like just as much for different reasons. So check it out here and compare the solos. You can see, different feelings, improvisations, what was going on in their minds at the time. This one's enjoyable too. Great album. I love the arrangements. Monaco's playing. It's really, he captures the intensity and fervor of jazz organ well. I think he gets a lot of tonal variety. He knows which stops to use to get the best tone. Really effective use of the Leslie. And I have to say that his bass pedal work is very impressive. Some of the best I've heard.
So too. Yeah.
And then I like the sax here. Soprano's a nice touch too, but Bayard's tenor is really muscular and adds an edge and aggressiveness to the playing. The whole ensemble's good. Turner's guitar adds a sort of soft, kind of laid back, nice extra character to it. Good choice of tunes. Yeah, this is a great album for organ jazz.
Pretty much. It's either, if it's not swinging, it's being funky. It's a fun record. I liked it a lot. I also mentioned the footwork from the organist. It really kind of steps out. Usually, it's not something you usually listen, but he's just so impressive that you couldn't help but going in there. And also the sound of the guitar, it had this kind of like hollow body electric sound.
Straight
really
tone.
Something from the past. I think it was kind of. I wonder what it says about us that we like this and the next album too that we're going to talk about, because they really are both kind of throwbacks to like the 60s and 50s when things were a lot different and maybe simple but still what would you say, being played by people, let's say.
Organic.
Maybe. So I got that from this one and from the album that's next. What would that be?
Well, this is the one I've been holding. This has been on hold, waiting to get enough other organ releases, and then they sort of just poured out. But
this one, I have to say, I've ordered this when it came out because I remembered last year's Delvon Lamarr record, and it still hasn't arrived on CD.
That's horrible.
I had to hear it on Deezer, but that's cool,
So we've got as the final climactic recording, one that I was waiting to come out because his recording last year, I Told You So, made our best of the year.
Yeah, we liked it a lot. The funky bass. Yeah.
Delvon Lamarr Organ Trio, their new recording, Cold as Weiss. That's Weiss, which is the name of the drummer, celebrating his permanence into the ensemble. This is on Coal Mine Records. This came out back in February, but I've been sitting on it to save for our all-organ program. Now, Lamarr is...
it's only a month later, really.
Well, yeah, really, I guess. But I try to get things out soon when I can.
Wait till August.
Lamarr's a Seattle-based Hammond B3 organist, but he's got an interesting musical background. I like AllMusic's description of his music. This is now quoting them. I won't take credit for this, but their style is drenched in gritty, greasy, vintage soul, jazz, funk, and R&B, and buoyed by canny improvisation. So gritty, greasy is what you're going to get here.
And put on your bathing suit for that guitar reverb that you're going to hear too.
It's great. So they started with a recording in 2006, Close But No Cigar. That's a great one. And then they had a live recording live at KEXP 2018. And you can see some videos from that on YouTube, I think. And then last year, I Told You So, which made our end of the year best of recordings. And here they are with Cold as Weiss. And this celebrates the new drummer, Dan Weiss, as a permanent member in the band. Although he did also perform on last year's recording as well, but they were sort of shifting personnel. And I think if you see some of the YouTube videos of their live performances, they've got a different drummer, David McGraw. Anyway, Weiss is become a permanent member here of this trio, which is Delvon Lamarr on organ, the great Jimmy James on guitar, and now Dan Weiss on drums. And, well, it's hard to really explain talking about this is kind of frustrating because this is distilled a kind of organ music that takes on this soul, jazz, funk, R&B that's all about the groove. Right. There is improvisation going on here, but the most important thing is the tight interlocking of the rhythmic feel, which cannot be duplicated in any electronic way. Actually, reading some interviews from about their recording process in the band is they don't even use headphones in the studio. They go in and have to record everything as live and organic as possible, and they just take the takes as is. There's no overdubbing, correcting, warts and all, because the most important thing is that natural interlocking of the rhythms. And so that's why they need a special kind of drummer here. And Weiss is a great drummer. Actually, the previous drummer, McGraw, was great too. These are real deep in the pocket drummers. There's nothing fancy going on here. It's all rock solid, deeply integrated rhythm. That's the core of what's happening here. So
I'm guessing that all means there's no auto-tune on this album.
There's no auto-tune. I don't think they're using
there's no auto-tune in the same building that
there's no metronomes. There's no recorrecting of the rhythm. This is just as it happens. So you've got this incredible funkiness of rhythm, and you've got one of the dirtiest sounding guitar sounds of all time in the greatest way. Jimmy James, this guy, it just gets the most funkiest and dirty sounds out of guitar. And he's a master of simplicity, using repeated lines, simple ideas over with just slight alterations, pitch bends, to create a real stew of wonderful sounds that you just can't help but love.
And it's almost like what popular music should be, or maybe was at one time.
And I think the great thing about this music, it's going to have, rhythm is infectious. If you play in a band or something, I play in a band and have played in different kinds of ensembles, all styles of music. When you're going to play in a live venue, when you may be competing with background noise or other kinds of things, there's two things that catch listeners' attention: rhythm and harmony. If you can get harmonized voices on something, you'll get people to listen. But even more basic than that is some sort of infectious rhythm. If you got a beat that has something interesting or infectious, it's going to get people listening and moving. And the Delvon Lamarr organ trio has that infectious rhythmic quality. I think it has a large appeal to different audiences of all ages and backgrounds. You're going to get drawn into this music.
Yeah, if people would only listen to it, we got to get them listening to it.
Well, they're doing pretty well, I think. Especially, I think seeing this group live. I've seen only videos of their live performances, but you should definitely, if you have the opportunity to see them play somewhere, check it out. Now, a lot of the songwriting credits are interesting. So they're credited to Daryl Dumas, which I think is Delvon Lamarr's real name. I think. And Dan Weiss, the drummer, and then Jane Williams, who I'm not sure who that is, but I do know that Delvon Lamarr's wife is the manager of the group because he wasn't interested in dealing with that part of the production.
Well, who is? I mean, if you're playing, that's a lot of work.
Tell me about it. Yeah. Anyway, he has an interesting musical background. Let's see. He started out in junior high school playing drums. And then he later taught himself to play guitar. Then he started playing trumpet. And then after that, he learned to play also flute, clarinet, trombone, and tuba, but kept up his drum work. Later, he was involved with other people playing organ, and he decided to focus on that. And so he liked that so much he focused and continued on that. So he's a multi-instrumentalist, seems to be able to create whatever he wants on different instruments. But I'm glad he's chosen the Hammond B3 because this is just great music that you're bound to love. The only problem with this recording, and you'll find this in any reviews that you look at, is it's rather short and it leaves you wanting more. But that's never a bad thing, to not wear out your welcome. So we start out with an original by the band. These credits for all the originals are Dumas, Weiss, and Williams. So pull your pants up.
Oh, jeez.
Like an old man. This starts out with a great Jimmy James dirty riff into a descending organ line melody and a contrasting descending organ chord section in there as well. Very animated and funky organ solo by Lamarr on this one to get you warmed up into the album. I can't really, as I said, it's all about grooves. So each groove is a little bit different, unique rhythm, pace to it. It's all about the groove. So you've really got to listen to it. Track 2, Don't Worry About What I Do. Again, original tune. This one has a little slower groove, a very gnarly, like think tendons and bone visible descending guitar melody line with spaced out notes. James gets solo longer on this one. He bends the notes until they almost rip apart. He's a master of repeating phrases and just slightly alternating them. The
solo was a bit of like a psychedelic funk sort of thing. It had this kind of weird effect.
Which ends with a really nice descending glissy run. It's so dirty you'll need a shower or at least a wipe at the end of listening to this too.
A wipe.
Lamarr keeps rocking the chords, pumping underneath, and Weiss keeps the beat deep in the pocket. Track 3, this one is tuned by Arthur, T-Boy Ross, and Leon Ware. This is a Michael Jackson tune from 1972. And I think last year they had big success. They did a cover of Wham's Careless Whisper on I Told You So, which turned out to be a well-requested song.
That was one of the things that we kind of picked up on, I think, on that album in calling it our album of the year. I thought it was a really bold choice of tunes.
Really interesting. So I think they're incorporating that idea of having at least one cover that might be known here. This one starts out with an alternating chord riff. Lamarr takes the melody. He keeps the tone very high and straight. There's no Leslie or vibration going on in the tone. James has a tasty rhythmic strumming underneath, and Weiss mixes up the beat with rim clicks and big hits. We get a modulation halfway through the tune to lift it to the end. Track 4, original tune, Big TT's Blues, and that is capital T, apostrophe S. Nice title.
Wonder who he is.
Yeah.
Or she.
She.
This is a very bluesy track, though.
Dirty. I read it twice. Tone, nasty reverby guitar riff from James. It's
reverby. Yeah, I hear reverb soaked.
Yes, soaked.
Bring a towel.
It's a true slow 12-bar blues. Yeah, bring this to the TT bar. Think 60s Chicago blues style. Junior Wells, that kind of thing. They go around the simple melody twice. Lamarr's up for an organ solo. He creates anticipation with lots of space, gets in lots of trills, keeping it all bluesy. James is all filthy blues as well. Lots of bent notes and beautiful simplicity. Lots of fun at the TT Blues Bar.
At the TT Blues Bar. Well,
Track 5, Get Da Steppin'. And this one is just credit to Daryl Dumas, so Delvon Lamarr. Interesting bass organ riff with a skip in it. It's got this little skip in the rhythm that opens it up. A tight rhythm from James and drums. It lays down on one chord for a long time, but it has a couple of chord shifts and a little 4-chord turnaround sequence that breaks it up. The organ solo here is hypnotic and rhythmic to match the beat, and Lamarr gets the Leslie speaker swirling to whip it up and add some excitement. Track 6, Uncertainty. This is again credited to the 3 names. Drum intro to a cruising groove. There's that cruising groove idea again. It's a little bit lighter, driving along in your Coupe de Ville. Lamarr has
in your
yeah,
Coupe
my
de Ville.
Coupe de Ville. Oh God, I love that car. I should never sold it. Lamarr has some different stops pulled out for a real 70s sound on the organ. James carries the melody with tasty little guitar lines. The hook for the song are occasional syncopated pickup notes of dun 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 into the phrase, and then it has these 16th note repeated note breaks with the drums like da 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 dun 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 chaka chaka bum bum boom boom da 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 da, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
right out of the late 60s, early 70s.
So I was thinking like some of those pop tunes, like something Lionel Richie like about them, with the Spinners, or one of those bands. Yeah, I had that type of groove, only slow. In this case, it was pretty chilled out.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
This album's all about the groove. That's what it goes to. And then it gets this tune also has a lifting modulation for the last time through at the ending of the song. So it just floats you on through. 7, Keep On Keeping On, Albert Norvo tune. This is a bass pedal and organ chord riff joined by funky guitar in an ascending riff. Lamarr takes the melody on the organ, has some interesting descending bass, and then lifting chord changes after you get settled into that one chord groove. So you sort of think you're going to be laying on that chord. The bass descends. It's not really clear the chords are moving with it, but then they lift through these changes from there. Tasty restrained organ solo by Lamarr here, and a nice unison locked in repeated ascending riffs to the end. Track 8, another band original to the 3 names, Slip and Slide. Drums and ascending chords that get broken up on a repeat in the intro, just so you don't think it's going to be the same thing through the whole tune. This one has a different kind of groove. It's kind of like a happy gospel dance, but it changes to minor section a bit before going through this uplifting cycle of chords. There's a nice kind of call and response answering of the guitar, of the organ lines in the guitar phrases, and then they trade off for sections between the instruments. So a little bit different arrangement. That's nice.
Yeah, this particular track was too short. It really is like 2.5 minutes long. This could have easily been double the length. You wouldn't have gotten
it's really
tired.
over before you begin.
Yeah.
And we end with another credit to the 3 same names, Dumas, Weiss, Williams. This is Who I Is. super, super funky 70s TV theme feel here.
Saving the funkiest for last.
Yeah.
TV theme.
Tight wah-wah muted rhythm chords on guitar by James. There's a jazzy chord progression on the organ which breaks up this sort of kind of static feel to it, where James adds some crazy guitar licks. James gets a funky guitar solo with tasty effects. They really make you want to grow your sideburns. If you listen to this in the morning, you won't shave up all the way to your ears. So just get going down.
Oh my!
And then it riffs out on the rising chords from that section at the end with some more tasty James guitar. You know what? I've decided this should be in a Tarantino movie soundtrack.
Or somebody who wants to start making movies.
Don't go back to the 70s and get some washed up old thing. Use this new music.
Those 70s guys don't need any more money. So come on, these guys do. They're young.
I mean, this is so, this is so good. With this recording, you get more of the same, but it's just what you want. It's like when you go to your favorite greasy diner. And, you usually get the meatloaf sandwich, but today's the sausage sandwich, and you get that, and you say, oh, why haven't I ordered this one before? Or in Japan here, I go to my local yakitori shop. You can fit just a few people in. It's all greasy. It's smoky. It's just dirty enough, but I love it, and I go back there. It tastes
what is
good
it about
every
those
time.
places that people like so much? You got to stand up by the bar. I want to sit down.
Where I go, you can sit down. Where you have to come.
You can sit down at that place.
Yeah, well, let's go there. Let's go there sometime, and then we'll talk about it on the podcast.
Okay.
Anyway,
I've been to plenty yakitori places though.
Yeah.
This is the one we always bring guests to downtown. We got if any of our musical guests want to visit us, we'll bring them to. What is that? The one on... I can't even remember the name of the street now.
I know all the good ones.
It's still there.
I'll take it to my favorite ones because I'm a connoisseur.
Anyway,
that's what you get here. Greasy, smoky, bacon grease. Boy, this is really good. It's all about the rhythms that lock in. I think that they've hit upon a great concept. They're getting back this grooved music with, in the pocket rhythms, no drum machine. It's all organic and that great Hammond sound. Jimmy James is a stellar guitarist who just pulls out the most, simplest, emotional kind of feel on guitar. He never tries to be fancy. He's just super funky and great tone, great use of time and bends. And Weiss fits into this as the permanent drummer of the ensemble perfectly. So, just great, enjoyable. It's great to see organ recordings just popping out one after the other. And there's some really good ones here. I'm going to keep adding to my list, and we'll get another organ episode in when I've got another list. So,
well, I, for one, am looking forward to that. Yeah, this one was great, too. I still have this idea that I liked last year's better than this, I guess because of Careless Whisper, and it was just surprising that way. But this was like super funky, and I think I'm going to, dig it more as I hear it more.
Yeah, well, it's a fast follow-up, too. I mean...
Yeah, there's that, too. And
popping it right out there. So, I guess how they write these, they're just based on jams. And then when they get a good groove, they say, okay, we're going to use that, and let's lay it down fresh. And so you get that kind of new freshness to the, all of their tunes. They've just birthed into existence, and they're going to record it. So I guess that with the Careless Whisper, he was just doodling with it as a joke, and then someone said to him, hey, you should do that. And he's like, no, you should do that. So they tried it, and the crowd went wild. So.
As they would. Anything familiar is going to do that to a crowd. If you can work out a good arrangement, you're okay.
And then they had that great tune from the last time that was just this thing they were working on, and someone put a Post-it note on his organ, and it said, call your mom. And said, what's this tune called? He said, I don't know, call your mom?
Yeah.
Why not? So that's what they called it. So, I mean, it has that kind of, just spontaneous nature to it. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so
there you have it.
Organ, a funk organ explosion this week.
Boléro to get your juices flowing, and then your funky big TT's blues and organ to,
And let's face it, it's always organ time after you hear Ravel.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. All right. We better end this before my nose just kind of, I got a runny nose now.
What do we got next week? Any hints?
I haven't even checked. There's a lot of... I actually have stuff now, which is nice, but I got to look through this and see. Whatever it is, it'll be great, maybe.
All right. I'm going to decide because I've had one other part of my list which I neglect often, which is vocals. And I know you like jazz vocals.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. I don't want to steal your fire here, but
it's okay.
Tell us, because I know what you're going to say. This is one I'm anticipating.
My favorite vocalist, Catherine Russell.
Yeah, I like her a lot too.
Who has just been bringing out all of this great, she's got her niche with these old style songs, and her new album just came out on April 1st. And I've got a bunch of other recordings that I've got earmarked. I've got more than enough. So I think I'm going to bust out a jazz vocals, female vocals edition for next week and get some of those out.
Yeah, especially Catherine Russell. She's a big favorite of the Adult Music Podcast.
Yeah, guaranteed to put a smile on your face.
And she does a lot of these really old, kind of obscure jazz songs, and I just love those.
Yeah, and she's got a band, both in a small ensemble and big ensemble, that really understands that, period of music, and so they get that, Harlem kind of sound from those old tunes. And there's one tune on the new album that has there's two tunes, I think, with banjo and tuba in the bass. So you get to hear some tuba on a recording. That's really cool too. So
tuba.
We'll be checking that out, along with a couple other female vocalists that caught my ear in this year so far. So that's what we'll be getting in there.
I think I might go for some pretty mainstream stuff next week because we don't do enough of that really, and that's what I got. Okay. So we'll see. I don't know. I gotta think about this a little bit. There's a pretty spectacular recording of Mendelssohn Violin Sonata is out by Alina Ibragimova and Cedric Tabergian. That on Hyperion though, so the listeners wouldn't be able to hear it. But I was listening to it the other night. I was like, this is really great. We should. It's a fantastic performance. Maybe we'll do that.
All right.
There's a new. I don't know if I want to do this. There's a Chopin album by Ivo Pogorelic, and this is like a major release because he hasn't recorded anything in like 20 years. And I haven't heard it yet. You never know with him. It might be weird. It might be spectacular. We just don't know. So maybe we'll try that and see what we thought about it on the show. That could be good.
All right. Well, lots of good things to come. So please look forward to future episodes. At least we'll get some jazz vocals next week and some maybe other mainstream things in the classical category. Until next week, this has been episode 57 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. Once again, please do follow us on whatever platform or app you listen to us on. Like and subscribe. Please leave a comment on whatever platform you listen to us on. That helps us get more listeners. If you want to contact us directly, check us out on Facebook, Adult Music Podcast. Find our page. You can send us a message there or contact us by email, adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. Thanks again to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our wonderful logo. And see you again next week.
Next week, we'll just be here. I don't know.
That's right. With 6 new recordings. Until then, please keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.